Chapter 396. How is it? How does it feel to fight against the future you? Taking advantage of the gap in the battle, Guhan asked Etion through the sword mark. It feels a little weak. Etion seemed to have forgotten the fact that his personal shield had almost been broken. He grinned and said, although her swordsmanship and my swordsmanship are of the same origin, and some of the details are even better than mine, her swordsmanship is too rigid. There is no spirituality at all. That's why I completely suppressed her in less than 30 moves. If I were a human, then the future me would at most be an inflatable doll. I only have the form, but I don't have my soul. I can't use my swordsmanship at all. Such an opponent, even if her swordsmanship was 10 times better, she would still not be able to defeat me. Etion said it very well. He had basically described the characteristics of his opponent. However, to compare his future self to an inflatable doll, Etion's thoughts were really broad. Then how about the future you in other aspects? For example, attack power, skill effects, shield energy, and so on. Guhan asked again. The other aspects are not that great. Her attack power is only half of mine, and the skill effects are also only half of mine. I don't know about the shield energy. In any case, it doesn't exceed 700 points. Otherwise, my only Dukong plus the previous few attacks would not have been able to break her personal shield. Etion replied. Guhan looked at the energy of the Heavenly Sword's personal shield. It still had around 1050 points of energy left. The Heavenly Sword's personal shield had around 700 points of energy, and only around 450 points of energy was left. This meant that the future Heavenly Sword had at most burned away around 250 points of energy from the real Heavenly Sword. From the looks of it, the effect of the skill was indeed only half of the full 500 points. Guhan asked Etion these questions because he wanted to know what kind of rules the future sword followed and what kind of restrictions it would have. Unfortunately, the information he got from Etion was too little, and the information about the future sword on the internet was also very little. As for Sword Maiden Online, there was no existence of the future sword at all. Jerusalem City refused to provide the highest AI, Tamono Kakazi, with any information about the Sword Maidens in the Sword Pavilion, and also did not allow Sword Maiden Online to put Jerusalem's Sword Maidens data into the game. This directly caused a large number of Jerusalem's Sword Maidens to be missing in Sword Maiden Online. Therefore, Guhan could not come to a conclusion at all, because the information he could use was too little. P.S. There is a bug here. The author once said that Sword Maiden Online has all the Sword Maidens data. I apologize here, I didn't think so much in the beginning, but when it came to Jerusalem, it became like this. So I have to fix it here. Sword Maiden Online only has a part of Jerusalem's Sword Maidens data. Sword Maiden Online only has some Sword Maidens data. Sorry. This is for you. Liunian Ling suddenly sent a piece of information to Guhan's mind through her personal terminal. Although the communication with the outside world was cut off in the trial formation, it was still possible to maintain contact with personal terminals within a short distance. It was the same logic as when one's phone had no network and signal, it did not stop one from using Bluetooth to communicate with another phone. Guhan immediately read through the information Liunian Ling gave him. It turned out to be the complete information on the future sword. It was like someone had sent him a pillow just when he wanted to doze off. This Liunian Ling really understood Guhan's needs. Due to the Liunian family's vast network of connections and information network, the Liunian family's information on the future sword was much more than what could be found on the internet. The information on the future sword was also much more detailed. First of all, the future sword could not take 100% of the Sword Maiden's future attributes. Based on the wielder's sword essence and talent, it could take 20% to 200% of the Sword Maiden's attributes. In other words, if the heavenly sword had 100 attack power at some point in the future, then the attack power of the heavenly sword would be between 20 to 200 points. However, other than Olajendi, the other wielder of the future sword could only take less than 100% of the sword Maiden's attribute. No other wielder could break the 100% limit. Secondly, there was the problem of the intercepting time. There was an obvious reason. If the future heavenly sword was intercepted a week later, it would definitely not be as strong as the future 1 month later. However, if the future heavenly sword was intercepted a few decades later, then it would be interesting. The future heavenly sword would be many times stronger than the current one. Even if it was only 20%, it would be able to completely crush the current heavenly sword. However, power was bound to be accompanied by some sort of limitation. The further into the future the heavenly sword was intercepted, the more sword essence it would consume. Even though the information did not clearly record how much sword essence it would consume, there was a clear standard. Aside from Sword Emperor Anla, there was at most one sword wielder who had intercepted a future fragment 1 month and 3 days into the future. Combined with what he had experienced with the heavenly sword, Gohan could roughly conclude that Ashima's intercepted attack power was around 50%. This was a very good figure. The owners of the future swords from other eras had only managed to intercept 50% of the sword essence at most when they were treasure swords. Ashima's talent could already be ranked at the top among all the previous sword wielder. Aya. Looks like your strength hasn't changed much in 5 days, Lady Heavenly Sword, Ashima said with a smile. However, what did she mean by that? What did she mean by Lady Heavenly Sword's strength hasn't changed much in 5 days? Could it be that the future swords had intercepted Heavenly Sword's power 5 days later? Could it be that you're intercepting the Heavenly Sword from 5 days later? Gohan asked Ashima directly. That's right. The one who fought against Lady Heavenly Sword 5 days later was Lady Heavenly Sword 5 days later. That's why I said that Lady Heavenly Sword still needs to work harder. Your strength hasn't changed much in 5 days. Isn't that too lazy? Ashima said with a smile. You're wrong. The lazy one isn't Heavenly Sword, it's me. Gohan pursed his lips. Heavenly Sword's strength is completely dependent on me. The more sword essence I have, the stronger Heavenly Sword will naturally be in the future. That's right. That's the logic. Ashima's hand reached into the mist formed by the future swords. Then let me see if Mr. Gohan's strength has improved after a month. As Ashima's voice fell, the future heavenly sword once again walked out of the mist formed by the future swords. The heavenly sword 1 month later didn't look any different from the heavenly sword 5 days ago. However, for no reason, a soul-stirring aura emerged from the heavenly sword 1 month later. On the other side, Ashima, who had summoned the heavenly sword 1 month later, lost her balance and almost fell to the ground. She was panting heavily. Just as the information said, 1 month was probably Ashima's limit. After intercepting the limit of what the future swords could do, Ashima's sword essence was almost depleted. Hey, I'm a little interesting this time. The real heavenly sword's eyes lit up when it saw its opponent. The person most sensitive to the heavenly sword 1 month later should be the real heavenly sword herself. Just from the aura emitted by the heavenly sword 1 month later, the real heavenly sword knew that this battle wouldn't be as simple as the heavenly sword 5 days later. As expected, when the real heavenly sword and the heavenly sword 1 month later fought, the situation was completely reversed. Originally, in the previous battle, the real heavenly sword had suppressed the heavenly sword 5 days later. But now, he was actually being suppressed by the heavenly sword 1 month later. As they fought, the real heavenly sword felt that he could no longer hold on. Compared to the heavenly sword 5 days later, the swordsmanship of the heavenly sword was still the same and there was no improvement. However, what was shocking was that the attack power of the heavenly sword had increased by more than 5 times. The Heavenly Sword 5 days later originally only had half of the real Heavenly Sword's attack power, but after a month, its attack power had actually increased by 5 times, reaching 5 times that of the real Heavenly Sword. This was already an absolute suppression. If the opponent's sword technique was weak enough, Heavenly Sword could still use its own sword technique to suppress the opponent. However, the problem was that Heavenly Sword's current opponent was itself. Although its sword technique was rigid, its foundation was definitely the same as Heavenly Sword. This caused the real Heavenly Sword to be unable to rely on its own sword technique to suppress the opponent and gain an advantage. After exchanging a few dozen blows, the real Etion rolled away in a wretched manner and dodged a fatal attack from the real Etion. Then, he retreated madly and widened the distance between him and the real Etion. At that moment, the real Etion was panting heavily and his clothes were drenched in sweat. "Hey Gohan, did you eat gunpowder a month later? Why are you so abnormal?" Heavenly Sword said helplessly. There was only one reason why the opponent's attack power had increased by 5 times, and that was because as the wielder of the Heavenly Sword, Gohan's sword element had also increased by 5 times. Currently, Gohan's sword element was more than 2,700 quarks. If it had increased by 5 times, wouldn't it be around 11,000 quarks? Could it be that Gohan would become a famed sword-level sword wielder in a month's time? Not only did Gohan not expect such a result, even Ashima, who had summoned the Heavenly Sword 1 month later, was dumbfounded. She pointed a finger at Gohan's head, her voice trembling as she choked out a sentence. "You're abnormal." Yes, if the Heavenly Sword that had been summoned was really the Heavenly Sword 1 month later, then there was no doubt that Gohan was an abnormal person. In a month's time, he had increased his sword element by 5 times, reaching around 10,000 quarks. Although it could not be said to be unprecedented, it was not far from being unprecedented. The number of people who could surpass Gohan's result could be counted on one hand. Chapter 397. This Freak. The one who said this was Liunyinling, who was watching from the side. She was also shocked by the strength that Etion had displayed after 1 month. "Etion, can you continue fighting? If you can't, I'll do it myself," Gohan said to Etion through the sword mark. He had already discovered Etion's weakness. If this went on, Etion would definitely lose. "No need, I can deal with this guy alone," Etion gritted her teeth and said. Her pride did not allow her to accept Gohan's help. Moreover, she was facing herself. If she was defeated by Gohan in the future, wouldn't that mean that she was not as good as Gohan? As a result, in order to prove his strength, Etion went all out. He used all of his swordsmanship and foundation, constantly using all sorts of exquisite swordsmanship. Gradually, he managed to turn the situation around. He completely relied on the exquisiteness of his swordsmanship to return to a level where he would be on par with his future self for a month. It looked very wonderful. If this continued, Etion would be able to defeat her 1 month in the future. However, this could not last long. Etion had relied on overdrafting her physical strength to achieve this. Once her body could not sustain such a high-intensity battle, Etion might collapse at any time. Gohan, who was observing from afar, was well aware of this. Therefore, he had already made preparations. Once he noticed that Etion's physical strength was starting to collapse, he would forcibly take over the entire battle. What a joke! How can I lose to my future self? Dukong is the only one who can take my attack. Etion was also well aware of her own state. Therefore, she had to quickly break through while her physical strength could still support her. Very soon, Etion discovered such an opportunity. After a forceful attack, the 1 month in the future Etion revealed a flaw. The real Etion instantly grasped this flaw and appeared behind the 1 month in the future Etion's back. Then, she attacked her with, "Dukong is the only one." Very good. This attack should be able to wear off 1/10 of the energy of her personal shield. As long as I attack her 10 more times, she will be defeated by me. The real Etion thought silently. However, it was impossible to rely on such a rare flaw to attack another 10 times. Du Kang's cooldown time was 15 seconds. In other words, the real Etion would need at least another 3 minutes. This was too difficult for Etion, whose physical strength was being consumed at a high speed. However, no matter what, this gave Etion a glimmer of hope for victory. However, she never expected that this glimmer of hope would soon be completely extinguished by the 1 month in the future Etion. According to the calculations of the real Heavenly Sword, after being hit by Du Kang, the Heavenly Sword's attack speed and movement speed would be reduced by 30%. In this way, the real Heavenly Sword would no longer need to maintain a high level of stamina to face the Heavenly Sword after a month. She could slightly relax and conserve more stamina to support the next 3 minutes of battle. Etion's Kang would be able to reduce. Kang's attack and movement speed was Etion. Logically speaking, there was nothing wrong with the real Etion's thinking. If the other party slowed down, she could slow down as well. This was a very normal thing. However, Etion did not expect that the moment she slowed down, the 1 month in the future Etion would suddenly take out her wine gourd and pour a mouthful of wine into her mouth. Oh no! At the sight of this, Etion howled in grief. How could she not know her own limits? When she saw that the white wine gourd in Etion's hand had turned red after a month, Etion knew that something was wrong. She immediately gathered her stamina and began to forcefully increase her movement speed. However, it was already too late. Everyone knew that once a person broke away from a highly concentrated state, it was impossible to return to a highly concentrated state in a short period of time. They needed to prepare for a period of time before they could return to that state. After the real Etion broke away from a highly concentrated state, it was impossible for her to return without a few seconds. These few seconds were enough for the future Etion to make a fatal attack. Numbing Mandala. After drinking a mouthful of the red wine gourd, the 1 month in the future Etion's body glowed with a frightening red light. Then, her speed instantly returned to the state she was in before Du Kang attacked her. She slashed at the real Etion. Because the real Sky Reliance had already lowered its speed, its rhythm was a beat slower when it was dealing with this move. This delay allowed 1 month later's sword to hit the real Sky Reliance's body squarely. The real Etion instantly felt a numbness in her head. Her entire body could not move. It was as if her acupuncture points had been poked. She stood there softly, no longer attacking or moving. Oh no, Etion has been paralyzed. In the distance, Gohan discovered that something was wrong with Etion. However, even though Gohan discovered that something was wrong, he could not help Etion at all. He could only watch as the 1 month in the future Etion's attack fiercely hit the real Etion. The real Etion did not resist at all. She allowed the attack to hit her body. Then, she was sent flying more than 10 meters away by the huge force. The protective shield on her body was instantly filled with cracks. It was in a state where it could collapse at any time. Etion, come back! Seizing this opportunity, Gohan forcibly returned Etion to his hand. A sword maiden that was in contact with the opponent could not be summoned back by the sword wielder. She could only be summoned back by the sword wielder after she broke away from the opponent. Therefore, after seeing Etion being sent flying and separated from the opponent, Gohan immediately returned Etion to her sword. Etion, who had been summoned back by Gohan, did not make a sound. Originally, she would not allow herself to be forcefully summoned back, but now she obediently shut her mouth. If Gohan had not summoned her back just now, she would have been paralyzed for a whole 5 seconds. These 5 seconds were enough for the 1 month in the future Etion to kill her until her durability was 0. It could be said that Gohan's action had saved her life. How could she still have the face to quarrel with Gohan? That move just now was your advanced skill, Numdatura, right? Gohan smiled bitterly. Numdatura was Etion's advanced skill. Heavenly Sword, drink a mouthful of Numdatura and enter a state of excitement. Lose all sense of pain and become immune to all stun, paralysis, dizziness, and other mind control skills. Lasts 10 seconds. Moreover, during battle, there was a chance that the enemy would enter a state of paralysis for 5 seconds. Just now, the 1 month in the future Etion had used this skill. She had immediately dispelled the drunken state caused by only Du Kong. Moreover, she had also triggered the paralysis effect of the attack, causing the real Etion to be paralyzed on the spot for a whole 5 seconds. It was no wonder that the real Etion could not move at all. Damn it! If you had given me deep sword scars earlier, I would have been able to use Numdatura. If that was the case, would I still be afraid of that fellow? This heroine would have been able to hang her up and beat her up. Etion said indignantly. She had finally found a chance to put the blame on Gohan. I only have some sword scars, dust, and crystals. I don't even have any fragments. How could I help you reach deep sword scars? Gohan said helplessly. The things I have can only help you reach deep sword scars to deep sword scars at most. After all, I have only been a sword wielder for a few days. How could I have accumulated so much? Then how could she reach deep sword scars to deep sword scars? The she that the real Etion was referring to was naturally the Etion in the future. You can be jealous of anyone, but why are you jealous of her? Gohan's tone became even more helpless. She is you in the future. This means that I would have strengthened you to deep sword scars in a month. You should be happy. I'm so good to you. This heroine doesn't care about this. It's your fault that you didn't strengthen me to deep sword scars. Otherwise, how could I have lost to myself? Etion said this without any confidence. She was forcefully pushing the blame away. Gohan curled his lips. He could not be bothered to argue with Etion anymore. Mr. Gohan, how about it? Do you want to admit defeat? On the other side, Ashima smiled tenderly. You are indeed very powerful. I didn't expect you to be this powerful in a month. Otherwise, my future sword scars would not be able to defeat your heavenly sword. Right now, the shield of your heavenly sword scars is about to break. It's better to admit defeat and let me and Ling have a showdown. Ashima's words were very problematic. What did she mean by a showdown? Could it be that one of them was a male and the other was a female? Letting go of this huge point, Gohan naturally would not admit defeat in the face of Ashima's persuasion. He did not want to lose to a woman. Gohan grasped the heavenly sword in his hand tightly. He shook the sword in his hand and said with a smile, I'm still fine, aren't I? It won't be too late to surrender when Etion defeats me. Could it be that Mr. Gohan is also a sword master? Ashima was shocked. She felt a faint sense of disdain in her heart. Nowadays, sword masters were becoming more and more worthless. Anyone who had grasped some *T swordsmanship dared to call themselves a sword master. That's fine too. I'll beat Liunian Ling's little lover into a pig's head. This will also make Liunian Ling lose face. For a woman, her man was the most important bargaining chip between women. If you don't believe me, just look at those student gatherings. How many women say how awesome and rich their man is? When have they ever said how awesome they are? Since that's the case, Ashima will have a taste of Mr. Gohan's skills. Just now, it was Mr. Gohan's heavenly sword that took the initiative to attack. Now, it's my turn to give it a try. Chapter 398. She really is strong. As soon as Gohan clashed with the heavenly sword, he felt a huge pressure from the heavenly sword. Indeed, whether it was strength or speed, she was much stronger than Gohan. Gohan exchanged dozens of blows with her, but he didn't gain the slightest bit of advantage. Gohan used many exquisite moves, but they were all blocked by Heavenly Sword's brute force. On the contrary, Gohan had to focus and use all kinds of dodging techniques to negate Heavenly Sword's attack. Just like that, The two of them exchanged dozens of blows, and it seemed like neither could do anything to the other. Where did this guy called Gohan come from? How can his swordsmanship be so terrifying? Ashima was dumbfounded as she watched the battle between Gohan and Heavenly Sword. Why did this guy called Gohan's swordsmanship seem to be not much weaker than Liu Nianling's? Can I block Heavenly Sword's attack? On the other side, Liu Nianling was also asking herself if she could defeat the Heavenly Sword if she was in Gohan's position. But very quickly, Liu Nianling shook her head in shame. Unless she used the billion sword technique or some other powerful swordsmanship, she might not be able to reach Gohan's current level with just swordsmanship. In other words, in terms of swordsmanship, Liu Nianling was inferior to Gohan. This was very embarrassing. As the descendant of the dignified Liu Nian family, her swordsmanship was actually inferior to someone of the same age. This was very rare in history. After all, apart from a few people, the descendants of the Liu Nian family were all talented in swordsmanship. In addition, they had received the best swordsmanship education since they were young. In the past 1,000 years, the number of people who could surpass the Liu Nian family in swordsmanship could be counted on one hand. There were probably no more than 20 people. It seemed like the number of people couldn't be counted with 2 hands, let's count with 2 feet. Just like that, both sides were evenly matched, from dozens of moves to hundreds of moves. Then, Gohan gradually gained the upper hand. For some unknown reason, Gohan did not overdraft his physical and mental power like the real Heavenly Sword. He just maintained a certain rhythm and slowly gained the upper hand. How could that be? How did he gain the upper hand? Ashima furrowed her brows tightly. Although she didn't know any sword techniques, her understanding of sword techniques was very deep. She could already tell that Heavenly Reliance was at a disadvantage, and had switched from being evenly matched to being on the defensive. But she couldn't understand why it was like this. Gohan clearly didn't make any changes. This is a change in power. Liu Nianling, on the other hand, seemed to understand something. After all, as the successor of the Liu Nian family, she still had some discernment and knew much more than Ashima. Hey, what is a change in power? Song Yifei moved closer to Liu Nianling and asked softly. The so-called power is a type of power that can only be used when a sword master's swordsmanship has reached a certain level. Liu Nianling muttered, "Power isn't something that you have from the start. Instead, it is accumulated through various details in a competition of swordsmanship. It's like 2 people building a house at the same time. One of them uses 100 bricks a day, while the other uses 101 bricks a day. You might not be able to see any difference in a short period of time, but after a long period of time, the difference will become apparent. The latter's house will be taller and sturdier than the former." Of course, this analogy is also inappropriate. The addition of a brick to a house could at least be seen, but the accumulation of force was indeed invisible. When you realize that the opponent's momentum has already taken shape, you have already fallen into the opponent's momentum. Unless you also have your own momentum, or use a powerful skill to forcefully break through the opponent's momentum, you will definitely lose this fight. Liu Nianling finished speaking, but there was one thing that Liu Nianling didn't say. As the direct descendant of the Liu Nian family, Liu Nianling had only touched the edge of her power. She was still a thin membrane away from truly possessing her own power. However, Gohan had already mastered it. This was an irrefutable fact that told Liu Nianling that her swordsmanship was indeed inferior to Gohan's. Liu Nianling's explanation made Song Yifei dizzy. However, Song Yifei understood that Gohan had already gained the upper hand. If Heavenly Reliance couldn't break through this so-called power, then it would definitely lose. Go! Gohan, you can do it! Song Yifei suddenly shouted like a little fan of Gohan, breaking the silence in the arena and giving everyone a shock. This idiot, what's the use of cheering? Gohan cursed inwardly. However, he didn't know why the sword in his hand had become smoother. Even Gohan's own power had faintly become more vigorous. This time, heavenly reliance became even more unbearable. This heavenly reliance was only an intercept of the future heavenly reliance. It only had heavenly reliance's instincts, but it didn't have heavenly reliance's soul. Therefore, the swordsmanship seemed very stiff and didn't have any spirituality to speak of. However, even with its own instincts, heavenly reliance felt like it was trapped in an invisible cage. Moreover, this cage was constantly shrinking. Finally, there would be a moment when it would be completely bound by this cage and fall into inevitable defeat. Therefore, heavenly reliance decided to end this stage of purely competing swordsmanship and start using its own skills to determine the outcome. It wanted to forcefully break through this incomparably unbearable cage of power. Only Du Kong. Heavenly reliance poured a mouthful of Du Kong wine into its mouth. The blade of the sword burned with alcohol. Then, it wanted to give up its defense and use this move on Gohan at the cost of injuring itself. Heavenly reliance's personal shield was 2.5 times that of Gohan's. If it could successfully change the shield's energy, no matter how it was calculated, heavenly reliance would make a huge profit. Therefore, it went without saying that Gohan wouldn't let heavenly reliance do as it wished. Since heavenly reliance had already used its skill, then Gohan could also use his 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Facing heavenly reliance's sword that was going all out to kill him, Gohan's heart moved. He used the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, movement technique, sword curtain formation. With a mysterious twist of his body, he miraculously dodged the sword that was almost certain to hit him. Then, he appeared at heavenly reliance's side. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the abyss. Gohan, who had appeared at heavenly reliance's side, immediately used sword of the abyss. 5 rays of sword chi burst forth from the blade of heavenly reliance like beautiful plum blossoms, colliding with heavenly reliance's body just like that. When was a bullet's most powerful? Naturally, it was when the bullet had just left the chamber. Similarly, the sword chi was naturally the most powerful when it had just emerged from the blade of the sword. The distance between Gohan and heavenly reliance was simply too close, so when the sword chi rushed out, it directly hit heavenly reliance's body. In an instant, heavenly reliance was pushed away by Gohan's powerful sword chi. With a stagger, it directly fell to the ground. F***ck. This person can even use sword chi. Ashima cried out again. It wasn't strange for a sword maiden to use sword chi, nor was it strange for a spirit sword wielder to use sword chi. However, for a treasure sword wielder to be able to use sword chi, that was very surprising. At the same time, heavenly reliance, who had fallen to the ground, struggled to get up. But how could Gohan let go of this opportunity? He used sword curtain formation with all his might. Before heavenly reliance could get up, Gohan stepped on his shoulder. Then, Gohan gripped the hilt of the sword with both hands. Glaring, he poured all the sword chi in his body into heavenly reliance. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword battling heaven. Gohan used up most of the sword chi in his body to use the strongest killer move of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword battling heaven. There was no limit to the power of sword battling heaven. Its power was completely dependent on how much sword chi Gohan had poured into the sword maiden's body. At that moment, Gohan had poured half of the sword chi in his body into heavenly reliance. In other words, that was 1,300 quarks of sword chi. One could only imagine how powerful it was. Heavenly reliance, who had fallen to the ground, did not even have the time to fight back or dodge. Sword battling heaven struck its weakest point, its back. In less than half a second, heavenly reliance's thick, close-fitting shield was completely shattered. Gohan's heavenly reliance stabbed into heavenly reliance's body. Heavenly reliance let out a miserable cry as its body turned into specks of starlight, disappearing without a trace. Phew! Gohan breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had won the battle, it had been a rather difficult one. Gohan had also revealed 2 of his trump cards. the sword force and the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, which he had only managed to defeat heavenly reliance. However, it was not completely without its benefit. At the very least, it was the first time Gohan had fought against an opponent whose swordsmanship was on par with his own. It was very beneficial to Gohan's swordsmanship. After the battle, Gohan had a vague idea of how he should continue to advance. It was a benefit that could not be obtained at any price. On the other side, following Heavenly Reliance's death a month later, the mist formed by the future beckoning sword suddenly began to spread violently. It felt like a patient coughing from a serious illness. The mist constantly dispersed and gathered. This continued for a while before it slowly calmed down. However, the color of the mist had become a lot brighter. Gohan could even vaguely see a graceful figure within the future beckoning sword. I can't believe I still lost. Mr. Gohan's swordsmanship is even better than Heavenly Reliance, who is ranked 3rd in the famed swordsmanship. This is really unexpected. No wonder Ling took a fancy to Mr. Gohan at first glance. What a pity. If only Ashima was the first to meet Mr. Gohan. Ashima said in a daze, as if she really felt that it was a pity. However, Gohan knew that she was purely giving up. She was the Saintess of Jerusalem, the female slave of Allah. She was a woman who could never marry any man in her life. If she really did that with him, the entire Jerusalem would probably kill him. Gohan did not answer Ashima's words. Instead, he calmly asked, "How about it? You can admit defeat now, right?" From Gohan's point of view, Ashima's future beckoning sword had already used up all of its power. It was impossible for her to fight anymore. Even if she could fight again and summon the Heavenly Reliance from a month later, it would be useless. She would still be defeated by him. How can I admit defeat? Ashima still has the ability to do so. Ashima chuckled, as if she did not intend to admit defeat. She then said, "Since Mr. Gohan is so powerful, Ashima will summon the Mr. Gohan from a month later. Let's see who is more powerful between the two of you." Gohan almost stumbled. This woman was quite powerful. He was afraid that Gohan would not be able to defeat her 1 month later. Chapter 399. I'm just kidding. My future sword has already reached its limit. Can't you see that she can't even maintain her form? Gohan could almost feel Ashima sticking out her tongue behind the veil. With a wave of her hand, the future sword returned to its sword form and returned to Ashima's hand. Hearing Ashima's words, Gohan inexplicably let out a sigh of relief. To be honest, if Ashima really summoned Gohan in a month's time, just by looking at Etion's strength, he knew that Gohan in a month's time would probably have reached the level of a famed sword. At the very least, his sword essence would have reached the level of a famed sword. In such a situation, Gohan could only admit defeat and hope that Liu Ling's billion swords technique would be able to defeat him. We concede defeat this round. We admit defeat, Ashima said to the air. Then, the entire arena quickly disappeared, and the space returned to its original size. The small bar rose from the ground again, and the dice on it also appeared. This die belonged to Gohan's team. They had won the final victory. Although they had won the final victory, Liu Ling was not in a hurry to leave the room. Instead, she moved closer to Ashima and the two of them chatted for more than an hour. Under Ashima's urging, they ended this long-awaited meeting. Let's go quickly. My 2 idiot teammates are about to wake up. Under Ashima's urging, Gohan's team finally threw the die and entered the next path. After Gohan and the others left the room, only Ashima and the 2 patients were left in the medical chamber. Seeing that they still had 5 hours before they could be fully healed, Ashima's expression was hard to tell under her veil. If a 3rd team arrives here at this time, it will be very bad. Won't I have to deal with a lot of people by myself? Ashima muttered to herself. As soon as she finished speaking, one of the walls of light in the room disappeared once again, and a figure walked out from the other side of the wall. Aya! I didn't expect you to have the talent of a jinx, Ashima. Ashima mocked herself in a low voice, and then immediately returned to her original appearance and temperament as a saintess. Mister, would you like to have a battle with this saintess? Ashima asked in a holy and ethereal voice. In the next 2 days, Gohan went back to the mode of constantly challenging the trials. Gohan and Liuyan Ling worked together to complete all the trials that they encountered along the way. The battle was still alright. Fighting against those Yuan Yan's memory fragments was actually the easiest. Usually, the poor cultivators would go up to practice. When the poor cultivators were tired of fighting, or when the poor cultivators couldn't beat them at all, they would directly switch to the heavenly sword. In short, it was just advancing forward. It was simple and clean, without any difficulty. What really gave Gohan a headache were the various skill-based trials. These trials were strange, and there were some that even Gohan found extremely difficult. For example, the requirement to eat 100 super hamburgers in 3 minutes. Gohan couldn't help but want to question Zhetian Jiendi about what kind of skill trial this was. What did eating fast have to do with fighting? What did it mean? Unfortunately, Zhetian Jiendi was no longer in this world, and Gohan couldn't find anyone to question even if he wanted to. Whether it was Gohan, Liuyan Ling, or Song Yifei, they all looked at the 100 hamburgers in front of them with disdain and disdain. What a joke, they were all girls. Even if they were killed, they wouldn't be able to finish 100 hamburgers in 3 minutes. Fortunately, there was Chi Pin in Gohan's team. These 100 tasks that were impossible in the eyes of Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei were just a dinner that could barely fill his stomach in the eyes of Chi Pin. Therefore, under the admiring but not jealous eyes of Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei, Chi Pin easily ate all the hamburgers. In the end, he even patted his slightly round belly and said cutely, "Gohan, do you have any more? This is quite delicious." Gohan looked at the time. There was still about a minute left before the 3-minute time limit. He estimated that no one in this world could surpass Chi Pin in terms of eating. Oh, that's right. Other than eating, there was also drinking. This was naturally Etion's forte. Seeing Etion happily finishing more than 100 bottles of all kinds of alcohol in one go, Gohan secretly decided that in the next 10 hours, even if the poor guy wasn't willing to fight, he would force the poor guy to fight instead of letting Etion out. God knows what she would do when she was drunk like a muddy puddle. Seeing that the red icon on the map was getting closer and closer to the end, Gohan felt that the trial was about to reach its end. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. The one who had an accident was none other than Gu Yun, whom Gohan had been somewhat neglecting. Ever since Gu Yun came out of the scabbard, she had been very quiet, so much so that Gohan had somewhat neglected her existence. Along the way, although Gu Yun was not as stiff as a rock like in the hovercraft, she was not much better. She would eat, sleep, and be very well behaved, but she had become very quiet, and her eyes often looked very empty, as if she had lost her soul. Gohan had never figured out what was going on with Gu Yun. Although the paternity test showed that Gu Yun was indeed Gohan's sister, Gohan still had some doubts about Gu Yun's origin. Vaguely, Gohan even had some very strange conjectures about Gu Yun. Originally, Gohan planned to deal with Gu Yun after returning to Yuzhong City, but when they were halfway through the trial, Gu Yun had a big problem. Gu Yun suddenly disappeared. That was one day after she went to sleep. Gohan, who was always the first to get up, patrolled the entire tent, and was surprised to find that Gu Yun had disappeared. Under normal circumstances, Gu Yun should have slept next to Gohan like Chi Pin, but when he woke up this morning, Gu Yun had disappeared from Gohan's side. He couldn't find any trace of her at all. Gohan, who was a little flustered, searched the entire room, but there was no trace of Gu Yun. The rooms in the trial were all white, and besides Gohan's tent, there was no other junk. Unless Gu Yun could become invisible, it was impossible to hide in this room. Unable to find her in the room, Gohan went to check his scabbard. Gohan thought that when Gu Yun came out of the scabbard, she might have hidden in the scabbard. Of course, he didn't find anything, and instead, all the sword ladies were in a mess. Just when Gohan thought that Gu Yun might have thrown the dice and left secretly, Song Yifei found something. When she was helping Gohan tidy up his bedding, she suddenly found a short dagger hidden in Gohan's quilt. "Hey Gohan, you're not trying to assassinate me, are you?" Song Yifei waved the dagger in her hand and said, "Nonsense. Right, I'm not worth killing. You should want to kill Liuyan Ling. After all, she is the descendant of the Liuyan family. If you kill her, you can get a lot of money. Even if you kill me, you won't have a chance to rise to the top." Liuyan Ling patted Song Yifei's head from behind. It seemed that the relationship between the two girls had improved a lot. They could even talk about each other on a daily basis. But Song Yifei is right. "Gohan, why did you hide a dagger under the quilt? This isn't my dagger. It looks like Gu Yun's dagger." Gohan took the dagger and looked at it carefully. Finally, he confirmed that this was the dagger that he had snatched from the three girls before he set off. It was also the dagger that Gu Yun wanted to obtain even if she had to die. This dagger should be Gu Yun's. Why would she leave it under my quilt? Gohan's heart sank. I know. Maybe Gu Yun wanted to assassinate you. Then, she couldn't bear to kill you, so she ran away. Isn't that how it is in the TV series? Song Yifei said heartlessly. However, even a fool could tell that she was joking. Her purpose was probably to ease the atmosphere in the room that was getting more and more tragic. However, her words touched Gohan's heart. Recalling Gu Yun's inexplicable appearance, as well as Gu Yun's identity as his younger sister, Seiji felt that something was amiss no matter how he looked at it. Perhaps Gu Yun really was someone sent by some faction to kill him, just like Reina Takasaka. Since he was acquainted with the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor in the past, it was possible that some of the current forces also had the ability to travel through time and space and understand the past and future. If they wanted to eliminate him, it was not impossible, and Gu Yun was the chess piece they sent to kill him. Just like what Song Yifei said in her joke, maybe Gu Yun was not willing to kill him, so she decided to leave him and escape from him. No matter how he listened to it, it sounded like a serious drama. Of course, Gohan did not have any evidence for this speculation. Moreover, the speculation itself was full of loopholes, and there were many things that could not be explained clearly. Then what should we do now? Should we look around here again? Liuyan Ling looked around. In fact, there was nothing to look for, because Gohan had just turned these things inside and out more than 10 times. Forget it, let's go. Gohan shook his head and began to put his things into his dimensional pocket. I have a feeling that Gu Yun is by our side, and she is not too far away from us. After that, Gohan put Gu Yun's dagger into his arms. This dagger was an important clue. In the future, finding Gu Yun would depend on this dagger. Chapter 400. Due to Gu Yun's disappearance, the whole team suddenly became gloomy. Although their progress was still smooth, they did not find any traces of Gu Yun along the way. If Gu Yun really did sneak away that night, then Gu Yun would definitely be in one of the rooms that he entered. Unfortunately, when Gohan's team was less than 10 squares away from the final destination, they still could not find Gu Yun. Either Gu Yun encountered an incident room and was forcefully teleported to another cubicle, just like how Gohan was teleported to Liuyan Ling's side. Or Gu Yun took the initiative to give up on a certain mission and chose to give up the trial and leave the trial array. No matter which choice it was an extremely dangerous decision for Gu Yun. Where was the missing Gu Yun? Forget it, don't worry about Gu Yun. We are only one step away from the final destination. Wait until we pass this trial array, then we can look for Gu Yun. There's no hurry. Gohan, who should have been the most anxious and closest to Gu Yun, took the initiative to comfort his two companions. With Gohan's consolation, the whole team finally regained some of their firepower. Let's see what room this is. Gohan walked to the small bar and glanced at the words on the small bar. He was a little surprised to find that it was actually a prop room. Gohan had only heard about it from Liu Ling, but it was the first time he had seen a prop room. The electronic map in Liu Ling's hands was a prop from the prop room. Oh, we're finally lucky. We don't have to face those strange missions and Yuan Ko anymore. Seeing that it was a prop room this time, Liu Ling also showed a rare smile. This is the simplest grid. I didn't expect to see a prop room just a step away from the final destination. Hurry up and activate it, let's see what we can get this time. Okay. Gohan's answer was simple and clear. He lightly touched the small bar, and the surface of the small bar suddenly separated. Under the surface was a square box with 9 different colors. Inside the box were 9 brocade sachets of different colors. Let's draw a brocade pouch. Whatever we draw will be the item. Liu Ling, who had experienced it once, explained to Gohan. Gohan nodded. Then, he casually took out a brocade pouch from the compartment of the brocade pouch as usual. This pouch is actually a dimensional pocket. As soon as Gohan put his hand into the brocade pouch, he was taken aback. This brocade pouch was actually a dimensional pocket. Furthermore, the pocket's space wasn't small. It was much larger than the dimensional pocket that the Sword Committee had given to Gohan. The dimensional pocket distributed by the Sword Committee was a standard dimensional pocket of 10 cubic meters, but this brocade pouch had more than 100 square meters of dimensional space, which was 10 times larger than the pocket Gohan was currently using. Such a brocade pouch could completely contain the floating bus that Gohan came on. This was a treatment that only spirit sword bearers could have. It had to be known that for something like a dimensional pocket, as the space inside it increased, the amount of materials consumed would also increase exponentially. If creating a dimensional pocket of 10 square meters required 1 unit of materials, then creating a dimensional pocket that was 10 times larger would require 100 units of materials. In other words, the small brocade pouch in Gohan's hand was at least 100 times more expensive than the dimensional pocket distributed by the Sword Committee. Gohan wasn't sure exactly how much it was worth, but in the hero coin shop, it should be worth at least 100,000 hero coins. This was more than an ordinary ancient sword bearer's lifetime's worth of hero coins. With just this small brocade pouch, no matter what the final reward was, Gohan would be able to recoup his losses from this trial. The rest would all be considered as Gohan's profit. What's wrong with you? Why are you staring at this brocade pouch in a daze? Seeing that Gohan hadn't taken out the item in the brocade pouch, Liu Ling was a little anxious. What's so interesting about a small brocade pouch that's not even a cubic meter? Quickly take out the item inside and let me see. Liu Ling's words made Gohan feel strange. Could it be that the brocade pouch that Liu Ling had obtained before was less than a cubic meter? If it was only that small, then it was very much in line with the style of Zetianjiandi's era. In Gohan's era, such a small dimensional space wasn't worth much money. Nowadays, even the factories that produced dimensional pockets didn't bother to produce such a small dimensional pocket, because no one would buy such a small dimensional pocket. However, in Zetianjiandi's era, dimensional space technology wasn't mature enough. Wanting to create a dimensional pocket with a large space was a very extravagant matter. It was only possible to succeed by using all kinds of rare materials. Therefore, in that era, the Sword Council didn't distribute dimensional pockets to their sword bearers. If a sword bearer wanted their own dimensional pocket, they would have to collect the materials themselves and ask them to help make it. They would either obtain the dimensional pocket left behind by their predecessors, or they would have to spend a lot of money to buy a dimensional pocket. In short, dimensional pockets were definitely very rare items back then. Out of 5 sword bearers, not even one would have a dimensional pocket. At that time, dimensional pockets were basically about a cubic meter in size. If the rewards on the bar counter were all left behind from Jetian Jiandi's era, then the dimensional pocket in Gohan's hand, that was 100 cubic meters in size, would be many times more precious back then. It was estimated that 9 out of 10 sword immortals didn't have such a large dimensional pocket. Back then, Jetian Jiandi just casually used it to store a small item, and then casually gave it to someone else? Wasn't Jetian Jiandi being a little too generous? If such a dimensional pocket was given to a team of sword-bearers, they might be able to save a lot of lives. No, maybe the pockets in the 9 compartments were all like the one that Ling got. Mine is the only one that's special, Gohan suddenly thought. With that thought, Gohan decided not to dwell on this problem. He probed the space inside the pocket with his mind, and found that in such a large space, there was only a small wooden box. The rest of the space was empty. It seemed to be a completely new dimensional pocket. Gohan took out the wooden box from the pocket and put the small brocade pouch into his clothes. Dimensional pockets were mutually exclusive, so a dimensional pocket couldn't be put into another dimensional pocket. However, the space inside the scabbard wasn't restricted. This was because the space inside the scabbard was protected by the sword Maiden, so it wouldn't conflict with the space inside the dimensional pocket. However, a sword Maiden could only protect the scabbard that they lived in. If there were more, they would be helpless and could only hang it on their body. What's in this box? It doesn't look like there's anything valuable in it. Liu Ling snatched the wooden box from Gohan's hands, raised it up, and put it down again. The wooden box was a standard rectangle, and the cross-sectional area was only about the size of a book. With such a small box, Liu Ling probably couldn't contain anything valuable. There's a secret manual in it. Liu Ling couldn't wait to open the wooden box, and found that there really was a book inside. It was a thin booklet that seemed to be only a few dozen pages long. The cover was blue, and other than the title printed on a white strip, there were no other decorations. It was a very simple book, and it seemed to be a product of the medieval era. Let me see. The blood in Gohan's body boiled when he saw the book. He recognized the book. The secret manual was exactly the same as the 3 sword techniques that were passed down in his family. It also had a simple blue cover with a white stripe printed with the title of the book. If the characteristics of the other ancient books were similar to this, then there was a small tadpole-shaped mark on the lower right corner of the cover, which was a special mark that no other ancient book would have. The moment Gohan saw the small tadpole, he felt that the book was in the same series as his family's secret manual. If that was the case, then there must be a connection between the 2 books. Gohan calmly took the secret manual from Fleeting Time's hands. The moment he touched it, Gohan was even more certain that the book was in the same series as his family's secret manual, because the texture of the book was the same as the other 3 secret manuals. Some readers would say, "Isn't this bullsh***? Isn't the texture of the book the same?" Of course not. If it was a book that had been printed in batches of hundreds of thousands or millions of copies, the texture would be the same. However, for a secret manual, the texture would be different depending on the material used, the era, and the way it was made. If you were lucky enough to touch some of the ancient books, you would realize that the texture of almost every ancient book would be slightly different. Only the same series of books printed by the same bookseller in the same era would have the same texture. The secret manual in Gohan's hands was different from the 3 secret manuals that were passed down in his family. Most of the ancient books were printed on paper, but the secret manual in Gohan's hand was made with a rare type of silk paper. The method of making it had long been lost. The reason why this kind of paper was called silk paper was because the books felt like silk in the hand. The moment Gohan touched the book, he could feel the smoothness of silk. It was the same material that was used in his family's secret manual. Hey, what's written in this book? Is it the story of Jiandi's love and hatred? Song Yifei poked his head in and glanced at the title of the book. Yin Yang Swordsmanship. Song Yifei read the name of the secret manual. He looks so awesome. Chapter 401. So, what does the yin-yang sword tactic say? Is it a powerful sword technique? Song Yifei asked expectantly. She was not a sword master, nor had she practiced swordsmanship. Therefore, she was the one who had no need for the yin-yang sword tactic. She only asked out of curiosity. I don't know. Gu Han read through the entire yin-yang swordsmanship manual very seriously. His expression was a little gloomy, or perhaps it could be said that he was a little disappointed. Obviously, the contents of this manual did not satisfy Gu Han. Let me see. Liu Ling stretched out her hand to ask Gu Han for the yin-yang sword tactic. Gu Han hesitated slightly, but still handed the yin-yang sword tactic to Liu Ling. Not only did Zhang Xian have his own strength, but fleeting time Rin had also played a part in obtaining the book. There's actually such a sword technique in this world. Unlike Gu Han, who had disappointment written all over his face, Liu Ling was very happy and excited. What's wrong? Is it very powerful? Song Yifei asked excitedly. No, this yin-yang swordsmanship manual is completely useless. Fleeting Time Lin was much more excited than Gu Han, but his conclusion was much more direct. This yin-yang swordsmanship manual may be very powerful, but it's a pity that it's completely useless. What the hell is this? Don't be so confused. Can't you guys talk properly? Song Yifei said with dissatisfaction. To put it simply, this is indeed a very powerful sword technique. After mastering it, it might not be any weaker than our innumerable sword technique. Liu Ling gave the yin-yang sword tactic a very high evaluation from the beginning. She actually put the yin-yang sword tactic on the same level as the innumerable sword technique. Since ancient times, there had been no sword technique that dared to be compared to the innumerable sword technique. Oh, so powerful. Song Yifei nodded and asked further, how powerful is it? After cultivating the yin-yang sword technique, one can break through the limitation of only being able to fight with one sword maiden at the same time, allowing the attributes of two sword maidens to be stacked together. If one also cultivates the yin-yang sword technique, then the sword master will be able to fight with two swords at the same time. The attributes of the two swords will all be added to the sword master, and the 8 skills of the two sword maidens can be used at the same time. Moreover, the two sword maiden skills can be fused together to form a new skill. Tsk, this is really too powerful. If someone really manages to master this yin-yang sword art, they would definitely be able to use it. Let alone me, I'm afraid that even my father would be helpless and be trampled on. A yearning expression appeared on Liu Ling's face. At that time, I'm afraid that a famed sword master would be able to suppress a spirit sword master. If Jiandi manages to master it, I'm afraid that all of the Yuan Kos will tremble under the hands of this Jiandi, just like our ancestor back then. It's that powerful. When Song Yifei heard Liu Ling's description, he couldn't help but be cautious. Why do you still say that it's useless? Because cultivating the yin-yang sword technique requires 2 sword maidens. Liu Ling rolled her eyes. 2 sword maidens? What's wrong with that? I have 2 sword maidens right now. Song Yifei patted the sheaths of his wisdom sword and netherworld iris sword. As long as it's a treasure sword master, they should be able to cultivate the yin-yang sword technique, right? They all have 2 sword maidens. No, it's not that simple. Fleeting Ling shook his head. You don't just need 2 sword maidens to cultivate the yin-yang swordplay. You need 2 sword maidens of the same level. 2 ancient sword maidens, 2 artifact sword maidens, or 2 famed sword maidens. In any case, you need 2 sword maidens of the same rank to cultivate it. Your Prajna sword and Netheriris sword won't be able to cultivate the yin-yang sword sutra. Song Yifei didn't expect that the yin-yang swordsmanship's cultivation conditions would be so abnormal. How was it possible to have 2 sword ladies of the same level at the same time? Didn't the sword wielder always cultivate in an orderly manner? Suddenly, Song Yifei's mind flashed. Linlin, I remember when we were in school, our teacher said that some sword wielders couldn't synchronize with higher-level sword mothers after breaking through the limit of sword essence, so they could only synchronize with sword mothers of the same level? Song Yifei recalled. Our teacher gave an example. There was a treasure sword master who tried for 30 years and more than 300 famed sword maidens, but he couldn't find a famed sword maiden that was willing to synchronize with him. Later on, he came across a sword maiden that was at the level of a sword maiden, and he suddenly succeeded in synchronizing with it. Just like that, he had 3 sword maidens, one of which was at the level of an ancient sword and 2 of which were at the level of a sword maiden. Didn't this satisfy the conditions that you mentioned for him to cultivate the yin-yang sword technique? I have 2 treasure sword maidens, Song Yifei said proudly. She felt that she had defeated Liuyan Ling in terms of intelligence. It was such a simple thing, but Liuyan Ling didn't think of it and said that it couldn't be cultivated. No, you can't. Liuyan Ling rejected Song Yifei's suggestion. I forgot to tell you that if you want to cultivate the yin-yang sword technique, you must have 2 natural sword maidens. This is because the yin-yang sword technique can't be cultivated by the sword master alone. It requires the sword master and his 2 sword maidens to cultivate at the same time. Man-made sword maidens are sword maidens without souls. They can only passively listen to the sword master's commands. They don't have their own souls, so they can't cultivate any swordsmanship or sword skills. Therefore, only 2 natural sword maidens can cultivate the yin-yang sword technique with the sword master. Then let's synchronize with 2 natural sword maidens. It's not a big deal. Song Yifei blurted out. However, Song Yifei regretted it as soon as she said it. She seemed to remember that her teacher had once said that if a sword master synchronized with 2 sword maidens of the same level, it would be impossible to synchronize with 2 natural sword maidens of the same level. However, Song Yifei couldn't remember why. It's impossible. The purple mansion of the sword master can't accommodate 2 natural sword scars of the same level. It was Guhan who said this. He suddenly took over Liuyan Ling's job and took on the role of an explanation. Natural sword maidens have souls, so the sword scars of natural sword maidens also have their own souls. Sword scars with sentience are actually aggressive animals. For example, if an ancient sword-level sword scar is a tiger, then a treasure sword-level sword scar is a dragon. If there's a tiger and a dragon on the same mountain, then the tiger won't dare to provoke the dragon, and the dragon won't bother to deal with the tiger. Therefore, both sides can live in peace. However, if there are 2 tigers on top of the mountain, then these 2 tigers will inevitably start a fight until one side drives the other away or destroys it. Only then will peace be restored. The top of the mountain is the violet palace of us sword-bearers. The sword scars of 2 innate sword maidens of the same level are absolutely incompatible in the same violet palace. It's just like how a mountain can't contain 2 tigers, and they have to fight to the death. However, if one of them is an artificial sword maiden, which is a paper tiger, then the situation is completely different. A real tiger will not care about the existence of a fake tiger. Gu Han explained a lot, which confused Song Yifei. Song Yifei clapped his hands and said, "Okay, I got it. You mean that a sword wielder can't have 2 natural sword ladies of the same level, and 2 natural sword ladies of the same level can't practice the yin-yang sword tactic. Therefore, it is impossible to practice the yin-yang sword tactics, right?" Song Yifei was speechless. He clapped his hands and said, "Okay, I got it. That's right. That's the reason." Liuyan Ling nodded and agreed with Song Yifei, which was rare. Then I don't understand. Since the yin-yang sword scroll is impossible to learn, why would His Majesty Jendi put it in the item box? Isn't it meaningless? Song Yifei continued unhappily. Also, this yin-yang sword tactics should be a sword technique created especially for the sword lady, right? Isn't it a sword technique that already exists, just like most of your ancient martial arts? Then why did the creator of the yin-yang sword scroll create such a sword technique? More importantly, if the creator couldn't learn it himself, how did he create it? Hearing Song Yifei's series of questions, Guhan and Liuyan Ling looked at each other. Song Yifei was right. They couldn't understand why there was such a sword technique that was impossible to learn. The existence of this sword technique itself was a very unscientific thing. Who can understand what happened in the past? Gu Han silently put away the yin-yang sword secret art into his dimensional pocket. Although it seemed impossible to practice this magical sword technique, it was undeniable that the yin-yang sword secret art must have some kind of connection with his Gu family. This sword technique must be kept in his hands. It wouldn't be too late to study it when he returned to Yuzhang City. Give me a 6. Song Yifei raised the die in his hand high and threw it heavily on the ground. At this time, there were only 6 squares left to the end. As long as Song Yifei threw a 6, Guhan and the others would successfully reach the end. The die spun rapidly on the ground for more than 10 seconds before it finally stopped. The number on the top was exactly 6, no more, no less. Yes, we made it, we reached the end. Song Yifei waved his fist excitedly. After going through so many things, Guhan's team finally reached the end. Chapter 402. As the old saying goes, the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. It was obviously not an easy task to successfully reach the final destination. When Guhan's team was only one step away from the final destination, a bear blocked their way. Too slow, too slow. It took you 4 whole days for the first person to reach the final step. You're too slow. It was a very pleasant female voice, but this female voice came from the throat of a bear. No matter how one listened to it, something was very wrong. In fact, there was nothing wrong with this bear. It was just a female bear. It's him. Liuyan Ling's hair stood on end when she saw the bear's appearance. She immediately pulled out her Ishian sword and put on a posture as if she was facing a mortal enemy. She faced the rather naive bear. You know me. The bear was very surprised to see Liuyan Ling's posture. It was stunned for a while before it patted its head. Divinity, I remember now. You're the sword-bearer that I chased into the trial array. This is the bear that chased you here? Guhan was shocked when he heard the bear's words. Only then did he remember that the reason Liuyan Ling had entered the trial array was because she was looking for the Emperor's sword hidden in Changyang Mountain. She was chased by an earth bear that suddenly appeared and escaped into the trial array to save her life. That's right, it's this bear. It's the one that chased me all the way here. But why? Why can a Yuan Ko enter His Majesty's trial array? Liuyan Ling's tone was a little panicked. Or rather, she was very afraid. Well, no matter how it came in, it's time for us to fight to the death. When the time comes, you listen to my command. Maybe we can still fight our way out and escape. Liuyan Ling said to Guhan. It is a meteor Yuan Ko. We are definitely not its opponent. The difference in levels is too great. The Fallen Realm Yuan Ko was equivalent to a human spiritual sword realm sword wielder, and a relatively powerful one at that. Compared to Guhan and Liuyan Ling, who were at the treasure sword realm, there was a difference of 2 whole realms and 3 whole small realms. Such a huge difference in strength was not something that could be overcome with swordsmanship. Liuyan Ling's spirit had already reached into her dimensional pocket, aiming at a stone sealed by a dozen talismans. She had already made up her mind to use the forbidden stone to send Guhan and the others out of this place, even at the cost of her cultivation being damaged and the sword Maiden being broken. Oh, you're quite smart. You know how powerful this deity is. Ha 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 ha. The female bear laughed wildly, as if she had already defeated Guhan and Liuyan Ling. By the way, little girl, you're the descendant of the Liuyan clan, right? Suddenly, the female bear began to gnash her teeth after laughing wildly. It's all your fault. It's all because of the Liuyan clan. If it wasn't for the Liuyan clan, I, a dignified ultimate god, wouldn't have ended up like this. The female bear roared furiously. I didn't expect the heavens to send the descendant of the Leonian clan to me today. I'll tear your skin, bite your tendons, and eat your flesh to avenge the 1,000 years I've lost. Hey Ling, looks like you've met your old enemy. Although Song Yifei was so scared that his legs were trembling, he did not forget to bicker with Liunian Ling. What did your ancestor do to this female bear to make it hate you for 1,000 years? Oh my God, wasn't your ancestor Lord Kenzu 1,000 years ago? How would I know? Our ancestors' enemies are all over the world. 5 out of 10 Yuan Ho have a grudge against our ancestor. How would I know how it became our ancestor's enemy? Don't argue with me later. I have a way to get us out of here. You have to listen to me or we'll all die here. Fleeting Time's voice was filled with resentment. I understand. I'll listen to you. Song Yifei nodded hurriedly. In an instant, she had changed from being Liunian Ling's enemy to being Liunian Ling's good girl, good friend, and best friend. No, don't use your last resort in a hurry. The situation is not that bad yet. Guhan stretched out his hand and pressed on the back of Liunian Ling's hand, motioning her to calm down. When Guhan's hand touched the back of Liunian Ling's hand, a warm current ran through Liunian Ling's whole body. Liunian Ling's mood actually calmed down just like that. I know. I don't want to use that thing unless it's absolutely necessary. Liunian Ling nodded. Young man, you're quite handsome. Aren't you afraid that I'll eat you? Roar! When the female bear saw Guhan's calm look, she began to feel annoyed. She opened her mouth and roared loudly. Then, a gust of wind comparable to a Category 12 typhoon instantly raged in the whole room. If it weren't for Guhan grabbing Liunian Ling and Song Yifei's hands, they could barely withstand the typhoon and not be blown into the sky with their strength. However, although Guhan withstood the typhoon, he could not withstand the stench that accompanied the typhoon. This female bear probably hadn't rinsed her mouth for about 1,000 years. The smell in it was even more deadly than the most poisonous poison in the world. When Song Yifei smelled it, his eyes rolled and he almost fainted. It was too pungent. Ha 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 ha, a bunch of useless little guys. This deity only roared once and you all fainted. You're so useless. How on earth did you rush to me first? Seeing that Song Yifei was about to faint, the female bear was extremely proud. From the smell in your mouth, I can tell that you've been a vegetarian for hundreds of years. Guhan fanned the smell in front of his nose, not to fan the smell out, but to fan it into his nostrils. This made Song Yifei admire Guhan very much. Such a stench, but he didn't even flinch. How strong was his perseverance! A vegetarian bear, how ridiculous! Guhan sneered at it fiercely. You little kid, I'm going to eat you. The female bear was furious at Guhan. She roared again, and was about to eat Guhan into her stomach. Alright, stop pretending. If you really wanted to eat us, you should have done it long ago. There's no need to talk nonsense with me and be mocked by me. Guhan sneered. This is Zhetian Jiandi's territory. I don't believe that a small meteor-level Yuan Ko can act so presumptuously in Zhetian Jiandi's territory. If I'm not wrong, you should also be a Yuan Ko controlled by Zhetian Jiandi, right? Humph. The female bear snorted and stopped talking. Obviously, this female bear had been seen through by Guhan. Just like Guhan said, she was also a Yuan Ko controlled by Zhetian Jiandi. She couldn't do anything to Guhan, nor could she harm the lives of Guhan and the others. All she could do was talk and release a few mouthfuls of poison gas. Alright Ling, put down your guard. This female bear can't hurt us. Guhan patted Liunian Ling's shoulder, indicating that she should drop her guard. She's not a memory fragment like before. She's the real Yuan Ko. Guhan, you can't let your guard down. Liunian Ling still maintained her guard. I've fought her before. Yuan Ko's memory fragments are different from hers. Memory fragments can't touch our sword bearers, but she can. She's the real Yuan Ko. I know, she's the real Yuan Ko. Guhan smiled and nodded. Don't worry, I can guarantee that she can't hurt us. Am I right, Your Excellency? Hey, you said. The female bear opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she immediately closed her mouth. Her pair of bear eyes were bigger than lanterns. Her bear mouth opened and closed, and after a long time, she said in disbelief, "You little guy, you actually know me." "Of course I know you. Jetian Jiendi's subordinate, goddess Isis from the Egyptian pantheon. By the way, where are your two companions? Where are Best and Anubis? Where did they go? Why didn't I see them coming out?" Guhan said with a smile. "You really know me." Although it was a bear's face, one could clearly see the astonished expression on the bear's face. "It's impossible for you to know me. Even 700 years ago, no one would have known that I was the subordinate of the sky-shrouding sword emperor. It's even more impossible for anyone to know this now." "Guhan, you said that she's Isis? The Egyptian pantheon's goddess Isis?" Liu Ling pondered for a moment. "Are you mistaken? According to the Liu family's information, Isis was Jetian Jiendi's nemesis. Before Jetian Jiendi became Jiendi, she was Jetian Jiendi's enemy. It was only after His Majesty Jetian ascended the throne that she disappeared, never to appear again. She spent her entire life fighting against Jetian Jiendi. How could she be His Majesty Jetian's subordinate?" "Is that so? Is that how it is recorded in history? It seems that history is not something that can be trusted." Guhan smiled. "Ling, you don't have to say any more. I'm certain that this female bear is Isis." Of course, Guhan was certain. After all, when I Ching subdued the three unlucky gods, Guhan was by I Ching's side and experienced the whole process. In fact, when the female bear appeared, Guhan had already recognized that she was Isis. 1,000 years had passed, but Isis's appearance had not changed at all. Plus, this was Jetian Jiendi's territory. If Guhan could not guess that the female bear was Isis, then Guhan could go die. If these three unlucky gods had been obediently following Jetian Jiendi, then it would not be surprising for them to appear in the trial formation set up by Jetian Jiendi. After Jetian Jiendi became Jiendi, the three unlucky gods were almost useless. It was a good choice to trap them here to prevent them from coming out and harming humans. Of course, this was only Guhan's guess. Guhan was also very curious. Jetian Jiendi had set up so many things in the trial formation. What treasures were hidden in the end? Chapter 403. Who the hell are you? How do you know this deity's name? Isis was puzzled, then suddenly began to go crazy. She suddenly appeared in front of Guhan and grabbed Guhan with her hand. "Let go of him." Seeing that Guhan was grabbed by the female bear, Liu Ling immediately became anxious. Regardless of the fact that she was no match for Isis at all, she planned to forcibly save Guhan from her. "Stop, Ling, don't move. She doesn't dare to kill me." Guhan immediately stopped Liu Ling. Although Guhan was grabbed by Isis, Guhan's expression was not flustered at all. Instead, he looked at the female bear very calmly. "You said that I don't dare to touch you?" Isis opened her big mouth and howled at Guhan again. This time, Guhan was almost facing Isis' mouth. The strong stench hit his face, and Guhan's eyes were full of tears. "I'm going to eat you. Even if I Ching doesn't allow me to eat humans, if I eat an insignificant human, she won't have the ability to come down from that world to trouble me." At this time, Guhan could feel that Isis really wanted to kill him. She was originally the lawless Yuan Ko, but she was forcibly subdued by I Ching's means. It was just like Sun Wukong's band-tightening curse, but if Sun Wukong really wanted to kill someone, the band-tightening curse could not stop him. At most, it would make Sun Wukong suffer great pain that he could not bear. In other words, if Isis really wanted to kill Guhan, then she could pay a certain price or endure some kind of pain and forcibly kill Guhan. It all depended on how fatal the hand that Jiendi left behind to control the female bear was. "I'm not an insignificant person, Isis. Gohan raised his left hand and placed his palm in front of Ice Eyes. Ice Eyes, do you know what this is? How did I know you? Ice Eyes looked at Gohan's hand with disdain. Then, she was shocked and threw Gohan to the ground as if Gohan was a hot potato. It's you. It's you. Why are you here? Didn't you disappear? Ice Eyes looked very panicked. She kept retreating as if Gohan was a demon that crawled out of hell. Looks like you recognize this ring. Gohan shook his hand again. The emerald ring on his finger was particularly eye-catching. This was the source of Ice Eye's panic, the emerald ring from Gyendi. As expected, this matter has completely encircled me one after another. Although the emerald ring successfully helped Gohan escape from Ice Eye's clutches, Gohan was not happy. Because this meant that everything that happened to him, everything that he did, might be under the control of the mastermind behind the scenes. All of his actions were within the other party's calculations. This kind of feeling made Gohan very uncomfortable. He had always been the one scheming against others. Since when was it someone else's turn to scheme against him? However, since he was already in the situation, Gohan could not escape. He could only obtain benefits that belonged to him in this situation. Gohan, are you okay? Liu Ling and Song Yifei rushed up together and surrounded Gohan. They stared at Ice Eyes, who seemed to be in a state of mental illness, with great vigilance. He. Ice Eyes began to laugh foolishly. This laughter sounded very stupid and silly. After a burst of silly laughter, Ice Eyes seemed to have regained her calmness. You don't have to be so vigilant against me. Just like this person said, I can't kill you. Ice Eyes snorted coldly. I Ching placed a talisman on me. Within the range of this trial formation, unless you take the initiative to hurt me, I definitely can't kill you. At most, I'll beat you half to death. Nonsense, when you chased me, you obviously wanted to kill me. Your murderous intent can't be hidden from me. Liu Ling did not believe Ice Eye's words. When she was being chased by the other party, she really felt that the other party wanted to kill her. Otherwise, she would not have fled in such a panic. If I really wanted to kill you at that time, do you think I couldn't catch up with your speed? Let you escape from the mountainside to the entrance of the mountain? If I hadn't chased you, would you have found such a hidden trial formation? Ice Eyes asked several times in a row, leaving Liu Ling speechless. Indeed, Ice Eyes seemed to be telling the truth. At first, Liu Ling did not think so, but now that she heard Ice Eyes say this, she realized that she seemed to have been deliberately chased to the entrance of the trial formation. The person who chased her away was naturally the female bear in front of her, Ice Eyes. Did you purposely drive me into this training formation? Fleeting Time Lin could not believe that he had fallen into a trap set up by a bear. That's right, I can't stay here anymore. It's a pity that I can't leave the trial formation too far. Otherwise, I would have chased humans into this trial formation a long time ago. When the things in this trial formation are taken away, I will be free. I Ching will not be able to control me anymore, Ice Eyes answered very honestly. Liu Ling did not know what kind of expression to make. Being tricked by a bear was really not something to brag about. You said that your purpose of chasing Ling into the trial formation was to let humans take away the things in the trial formation? Gohan paused. If those things are taken away, will you be able to regain your freedom? Yes, that's what happened, Ice Eyes said firmly. Alright, then get out of the way. We'll go to the end to take those things away, then you will be free, Gohan said in a deep voice. It's not that easy. Ice Eyes snorted, then walked step by step towards the wall. As she walked, she said, If you want to enter the end, there is one last hurdle, and that is to defeat me. As long as one of you can defeat me, you will naturally be able to enter the end and obtain the things inside. Otherwise, none of you will be able to enter. At this point, Ice Eyes knocked on the wall of light. Immediately, the wall of light opened, and Ice Eyes slowly walked into the wall of light. At the same time, A small bar finally rose in the middle of the room. On it was written the final test to enter the end. Defeat my servant, and you will receive the final reward. Please note, no matter how many people come to this room with, only one person is allowed to enter the room to challenge my servant. If you succeed, you will open the door to the end and receive the final reward that I have prepared for you. If you fail, you will have to take 200 steps back towards the end again. You can also choose to leave the trial formation here. Of course, once you leave, you will not receive any reward. Seems like this is really our final test. Gohan smiled bitterly. If any of you want to try, I'll let you go first. Don't look at me, I'm not going. I'm just cheering for you. Song Yifei was the first to wave his hand, indicating that he had no interest in challenging the female bear. From the conversation between Gohan and Liuyanling, this female bear seemed to be a meteor Yuan Ko, or some kind of god. How was he supposed to fight it? Song Yifei did not want to get involved in this mess. If I can go one step further and become a famed sword bearer, I have the confidence to fight this female bear. But the reality is, I really don't want to fight her. Liuyanling hesitated for a while, but still chose to give up. Although the Liuyan family's motto was to never give up, there was also a motto to know one's own limitations. Liuyanling was very self-aware. She had already lost to this female bear once, and she knew how big the gap between her and her opponent was. She did not want to be abused by the female bear again. The gap between the two of them was too big, to the extent that sword skills could not make up for it. Therefore, Liuyanling and Song Yifei focused their attention on Gohan. Liuyanling poked Gohan's chest. How about it? Why don't you go and try? Who knows, you might succeed. Yeah, Gohan, go and try. You won't die anyway. At most, we'll just wait here for you to come back after walking another 200 steps. Song Yifei also encouraged Gohan. Alright, I'll go in now. Gohan looked at the two of them and nodded. There was no retreat. Just based on the foreshadowing that Zhetian Jiendi had planted on him, Gohan had to enter the finishing line and see what Zhetian Jiendi had up his sleeve. Liuyanling looked at Gohan as if she was looking at an idiot. You can't beat that bear. You're no match for her. I know, I really can't beat her. Gohan let out a long sigh, but even the two of us can't beat her. Who in this trial can beat her? I believe that Zhetian Jiendi wouldn't set a dead end for us. This female bear must have some kind of weakness. As long as I can find that weakness, I'll be able to win. Let me ask you something. You seem to have known the she-bear for a long time. If the she-bear is really the servant of the sword monarch of heaven shrouding 700 years ago, how did you know her? Fleeting Time Ling suddenly changed the topic and asked an irrelevant question. I found out about it from Zhetian Jiendi's descendants. Gohan spoke without thinking. On the way here, we saved the descendant of the heaven-shrouding sword emperor, and I found out from him that His Majesty Shrouding Heaven has 3 Yuan Shen servants. At that time, I casually tested her, and the female bear confessed on her own accord. Zhetian Jiendi's descendants? Liuyanling looked at Song Yifei, who nodded. That's right. Iwenjun, who had a dozen generations of descendants, followed us into the trial. I don't know where he is now. Go! Liuyanling sighed and didn't stop Gohan. We'll wait for you here. Chapter 404. Is your name Gohan, or military governor? As soon as Gohan entered the combat room, Ice Eyes, who was lying on the ground, stared at him with her bare eyes. My name is Gohan. Gohan answered very straightforwardly. Very good, Gohan. I didn't think we would meet again. Ice Eyes kept rubbing her paws on the ground, as if trying to sharpen her claws. I understand now. The source of all my sufferings came from you. Without you, I would have killed I Ching with my claws. I wouldn't have to suffer so much. All of this is because of you. Ice Eyes kept rubbing her paws against the ground, as if she was trying to sharpen her claws. I can understand your pain, Ice Eyes, but I don't know what you're talking about. If you want to take revenge on me, shouldn't you at least tell me what I've done to you? Gohan said innocently. Ice Eyes was not like Etion. After Zhejiandi became Jiandi, she was not used by Zhetian Jiandi again. She knew nothing about Zhetian Jiandi. Moreover, Etion's memory seemed to have been tampered with by someone. Many key memories were removed. In addition, Etion had been hiding things from Gohan. She did not mention anything about Zhetian Jiandi, so Gohan could not find out the truth from Etion. Now that Ice Eyes had suddenly appeared, if what happened in the dungeon was real, then Ice Eyes should have spent her whole life with Zhetian Jiandi. More importantly, Ice Eyes seemed to know Gohan, and even called out the name military governor. This meant that Ice Eyes had definitely interacted with Gohan before, and had a deep relationship with him. Otherwise, she would not know the real identity of the military governor, which Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei had not told him. So Gohan planned to get information from Ice Eyes about what happened between him and Zhetian Jiandi. He wanted to know why Zhetian Jiandi would leave so many backups for him. These backups were too precious for Gohan. You don't know? Ice Eyes smiled. Of course you don't know. You haven't met that person yet. When you meet that person, you will understand. Who is that person? Why will I understand everything when I meet him? Gohan asked. I can't tell you. Just like how I really want to kill you now, but I can't. Ice Eyes snorted, then moved her body backward, revealing a circular entrance. Go in. Behind this entrance is the final destination. Go in and take those damn things, then I will be free. I can go in directly? Shouldn't I defeat you first? Gohan asked curiously. Do you really think you can defeat me? Ice Eyes rolled her eyes at Gohan. You can't defeat me now. There are hundreds of people in the trial formation, and none of them can defeat me. I don't want to be trapped in this formation for the rest of my life. Since you and I are old friends, and the things inside were originally left for you, you can take them. It will save me trouble. Thank you. Although he didn't ask Ice Eyes about sky covering Jiandi, being able to enter the final destination without fighting was already the best result. Gohan knew that even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to defeat this former god, universe-level Yuan Ko. The current meteor-level Yuan Ko was Ice Eyes' opponent. She was really too strong. The difference between her and Gohan couldn't be made up with sword skills or swordsmanship. Let's go. I can't accept a thank you from you. Ice Eyes laid on the ground, as if she had completely lost the desire to make things difficult for Gohan. Gohan still cupped his fists in front of Ice Eyes and strode towards the entrance. Victory seemed to be within reach. It's been so long. I wonder how Gohan is doing. Can he succeed? Outside Ice Eyes' room, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei were waiting for the final result. However, their states were different. Song Yifei was very anxious, but Liuyan Ling was very calm. As Song Yifei said this, he was lying outside Ice Eyes' room, trying to see the situation inside through the translucent wall. He wanted to see how Gohan was fighting. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. Although the wall was translucent, the scene inside was completely blurry. He could only see a bit of black light and nothing else. It was impossible to know how Gohan was doing inside. There's nothing to be anxious about. Gohan definitely won't be able to get through. Seeing Song Yifei's peeping look, Liuyan Ling sneered. I can't even get through. If she gets through, where will the face of the Fleeting Time family go? But what if Gohan gets through? Song Yifei was unconvinced. I think Gohan is more powerful than you. If you can't get through, why can't Gohan? Who said he's more powerful than me? Liuyan Ling seemed to be angry. As long as I use the billion swords tactic, Gohan will have to hide far away. I can beat him however I want and bully him however I want. As she said this, Liuyan Ling waved her arm as if she was cutting something. Just like this, I'll cut all his clothes into noodles and shave his head. From the inside to the outside, from top to bottom. I'll shave all his hair. All the hair was shaved? What kind of hair was all his hair? Liu Nianling's words were very imaginative. Hey, the words of the people from the Fleeting Time family are so disgusting. How did the Fleeting Time family become the top family in the world? Song Yifei said disdainfully. Just pretend I didn't say that. Liu Nianling decisively gave in. If this sentence was spread, then her reputation as Liu Nianling would be greatly ruined. She was the goddess in the eyes of many people from the Yanjing city's families. How could she ruin her own image? No. I'll say it. I'll let everyone know your true colors, Liu Nianling. The two of them played around the topic of confidentiality. It couldn't be helped. There was no entertainment in the room. Apart from the two of them fooling around, there was nothing else to do. Just as the two of them were fooling around, a male version of the heaven-shrouding sword emperor's voice suddenly sounded in the room. The trial taker has failed and has now retreated 200 steps. The next challenger can enter the room to continue the challenge. See, I told you he's definitely going to fail. Liu Nianling acted as if she already knew, but there was still a hint of loneliness and regret on her face. Gohan had also failed. Could there really be anyone in this trial who could defeat the female bear? I can't believe I was tricked by a bear. Reappearing in an unfamiliar room, Gohan's face was filled with bitterness. Just as he was about to enter the entrance, the bear that was lying on the ground suddenly appeared before him. Before he could even pull out his heaven-reliant sword, the bear had already sat on his waist. His entire body was suppressed by a weight that felt as heavy as 1,000 caddies. His cold hands were bound by an invisible power, making it impossible for him to even touch his heaven-reliant sword. Ha 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 ha. Military Governor, you didn't expect such a day would come, did you? Even I, Ice Eyes, have tricked you. Ice Eyes, who was sitting on Gohan, laughed like crazy. Her 4 short bare paws kept moving up and down, and she looked like she was about to fly. She was too happy, so happy that tears were coming out of her eyes from laughing. At this time, Ice Eyes was similar to Monkey Sun back then. Monkey Sun had been suppressed under the 5-Finger Mountain for 500 years. Once he came out, the anger that had been suppressed for 500 years burst out. In fact, this Ice Eyes was even more pitiful than Monkey Sunday. Monkey Sun had only been suppressed for 500 years, but she had been suppressed for more than 700 years. Military Governor, I've recorded everything clearly. You've tricked me 321 times in total, and in the end, you even tricked me here and imprisoned me for 700 years. Military Governor, even you have been tricked by me. Wahahaha, why do I feel so good? I feel so good that I'm about to cry. I really want to find someone to have sex with. Ha 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 ha. It seemed that Ice Eyes really felt good. You idiot, Military Governor. How could I let you in just like that? Don't even think about getting a single good thing in here. As long as I, Ice Eyes, am here, don't even think about entering the finish line. So what if I can't get out? Anyway, I've been imprisoned here for more than 700 years. I don't care if I have another 700 years. At most, I'll fight the landlord alone. Let me tell you, I've already mastered the method of doing 3 things at once. Each of my hearts can play cards independently, and I will never secretly look at my cards. Forget it. Mastering 3 things at once just to fight the landlord. How dare this female bear say that she wasn't bored and didn't want to go out? It seemed like her hatred for Gohan had already surpassed her hatred for loneliness. Ah, this is too good. This is too good. This deity has never felt so good in her life. These 700 years are worth it. Ice Eyes still couldn't control the smile on her face. She was too happy. Wait for me to hold my breath. Then, I'll fart on this guy's head and teach him an unforgettable lesson. Ice Eyes came up with such a despicable and dirty idea. Then, just as she was about to hold her breath, she suddenly fell to the ground. Where's that guy? Ice Eyes looked around blankly and found no trace of Gohan. F***ck, this guy actually admitted defeat. Chapter 405. Did I lose? Gohan, who had escaped from Ice Eye's spear but by admitting defeat, looked helplessly at his empty palm. This feeling made Gohan very uncomfortable. If he had lost due to a lack of skill after a big battle, then Gohan would have nothing to say. However, this kind of loss due to the suppression of absolute strength made Gohan very unwilling. I don't need to be at the spiritual sword level. Even if I have the strength of a famous sword level, I can still fight with that stupid bear. Gohan muttered to himself. The gap of 2 realms was really too big. Even with Ice Eye's huge body size, her movement was still completely beyond Gohan's reaction time, so Gohan did not even have time to pull out the sword lady to fight. She directly controlled Gohan in her hand. Suddenly, a voice came from Gohan's side. Mr. Gohan, don't worry. After all, that stupid bear Ice Eyes is the only one among the 3 of us who has recovered a bit of strength. You are only a treasured sword-level sword wielder now, so it's very normal that you can't beat her. Gohan looked down and saw a snow-white cat crouching beside Gohan. Gohan could not feel a trace of power from this white cat. If it was not for the cat's ability to speak, Gohan would have thought it was just an ordinary white cat. You are Batet? Gohan asked tentatively. Since Ice Eyes had already appeared, it was also a matter of course that Batet would appear here. Mr. Gohan can actually call out my name. It seems that Her Majesty's secret plan back then has already taken effect. Presumably, Mr. Gohan already knows that you have a deep connection with Her Majesty. This cat stretched out its hand. Don't misunderstand, it did not want to shake hands with Gohan, but wanted to lick the cute pink ball of flesh on its palm. Does this mean that you admit that the dungeon in the game is I Ching's backup plan? Gohan raised his eyebrows and asked. I guess so. Batet nodded her cat head, white and fluffy, especially cute. Her Majesty has really done a lot for Mr. Gohan, so I hope that Mr. Gohan can forgive Her Majesty. I don't think I've forgiven you. I've always been blessed by His Majesty Shroud Heaven, and I can't thank him enough. How could I possibly blame him, much less forgive him? Gohan was confused by Bast's words. What was the relationship between him and Jatian Jindi? Why would he want to forgive her? Did she do something to let me down? You'll find out in the future, Mr. Gohan. I just hope that when the time comes, Mr. Gohan will remember what His Majesty Shroud Heaven has done to you, and forgive Her Majesty. Don't let her suffer for the rest of her life. Batet said very sincerely. It was hard to imagine that this was the sinister and cunning cat god Batet from the temple. He now looked like a loyal dog covering the sky. Oh no, calling him a loyal dog seemed to make the husky feel ashamed. If the bear and the cat were still in this trial formation, then the husky was likely to be in this trial formation as well. I don't know what you're talking about, but I know that His Majesty Shroud Heaven has done for me, and I'll remember it. I won't forget it for the rest of my life. If His Majesty Shroud Heaven does harm to me in the future, then I'll remember it, Gohan replied seriously. But if you looked closely at Gohan's words, you'd realize that Gohan hadn't promised anything. It was just that he would remember the kindness they had shown him. Remembering the kindness they had shown him was one thing, but forgiving the other party was another. If the injury was too deep and fatal for Gohan, then Gohan wouldn't be bound by it. He'd deal with it in his own way. Sigh, Your Majesty, this is all I can do for you. Bast, the cute white cat, sighed, then jumped onto Gohan's knee and laid on Gohan's leg. She squinted her eyes and said, Since Mr. Gohan is here, then you must have been stopped by that stupid bear, Isis, at the final gate. Yes, I'm no match for her, Gohan admitted. Back then, Mr. Gohan single-handedly defeated us when we had just regained our bodies. I don't really care about that, but Ice Eyes has never forgotten. She has always wanted to defeat Mr. Gohan, so she was willing to disobey King Shroud Heaven's order not to stop Mr. Guhan in order to avenge herself. I hope Mr. Guhan can understand her, Bast said slowly, as if Bast was pleading for Isai's sake. I can understand her, but she can't understand me. Guhan shook his head. I'm ready to give up. With Isis blocking the way, I can't go. When I left, I heard that Yuzhong City's Yeyang fortress had been destroyed by Yuan Ko. Yuzhong City might also be in danger. I can't waste any more time here. I need to return to Yuzhong City and contribute to the city that raised me. When I return to the final gate and find my companions, I'll leave this formation. We'll meet again if fate wills it. No. You can't go. Meow. Bast, who hadn't used a meow until now, suddenly let out a shrill cry. She jumped onto Guhan's neck and whispered into Guhan's ear, Mr. Guhan, you can't give up. What will we do if you give up? What do you mean, what will we do? What does it have to do with you whether I leave or not? Guhan pulled Bast down from his neck. Bast's sharp claws were on his neck. Although Bast seemed to be unintentional, Guhan would never let his neck be exposed to a Yuan Ko who didn't even know if he was a friend or foe. Although Bast acted like he was an old friend and didn't intend to hurt him, things like Yuan Ko, especially a sly Yuan Ko like Bast, made Guhan believe only one word of what it said. Of course it has something to do with me, meow. Bast could only wave her snow-white claws randomly as Guhan grabbed her neck. We've been trapped in this formation for 700 years. His Majesty Shroud Heaven promised us that when the time comes, Mr. Guhan will come and take away the things that His Majesty left for Mr. Guhan. When the time is right, Mr. Guhan will come and take the things that His Majesty left for Mr. Guhan, and we will also be able to regain our freedom. Mr. Guhan, how can this have nothing to do with us? We've had enough of this. So that's how it is. Guhan put Bast down. In fact, Guhan had already deduced this from his conversation with Isis. Isis had also said the same thing. It seemed that Guhan had to take away the things inside before they could regain their freedom. Then let's wait for others to see it. There are hundreds of sword bearers in this formation. They are the most outstanding sword bearers of our era. There must be someone among them who can defeat Isis. Or just let Isis let them in. You can still regain your freedom, Guhan said deliberately. No, it's impossible for those people to do that. They can't free us. Meow. Bast was very anxious. Isis has no right to open the back door for anyone other than Mr. Guhan. Even if she doesn't resist and lets others in, they will not be able to enter the real final room. At most, they will be put into a fake room and get some trinkets left behind by His Majesty. Only Mr. Guhan can enter the real final room. No one else can even see the door. That's amazing! How does this formation know if Guhan has entered the final room? Does it want to draw my blood and test my DNA when I reach the door of the final room? Guhan asked curiously. That's not it. Bast rubbed his head. There is a whole set of identification systems here. His Majesty Shroud Heaven designed some special missions. These special missions can only be completed by you, Mr. Guhan. The formation relies on these missions to determine your identity. Our existence is only to support the operation of the formation, but we can't be sure of anything in this formation. Meow. Special missions that only I can complete? Guhan could not help but recall the pile of hamburgers and hundreds of bottles of alcohol. He seemed to understand something. Although I really want to let you out, I have no choice. Guhan spread his hands. Isis is blocking the door. As long as she doesn't give up on her hatred for me, I won't be able to pass her test. Why don't you go talk to her and ask her to let me in? It's useless. If we could talk to her, we would have. Meow. Bast the white cat swung her tail weakly. From the moment she lured the sword-bearers outside into this training formation, we tried to persuade her to give up on the idea of stopping you, Mr. Guhan. But Isis's hatred for you is too deep. It has already surpassed her desire to leave this place and gain freedom. So, we couldn't persuade her at all. Meow. Then let's fight. Gohan gave Bast an idea. Although you are good friends, when it comes to freedom, you can't care so much. Anubis probably wants freedom too. You can work together to subdue Isis and trap her without harming her life. Wouldn't that be better? Do you think we don't want to do that? Meow. Bast swung her tail in front of Gohan. The two of us are no match for Isis. Anubis was locked up by Isis because he lost in a fight. If it wasn't for my nimble body that allowed me to escape, no one would be responsible for explaining everything to you now. Meow. Bast licked her paw helplessly. Only then did Gohan realize that there was a scar on her paw that had not fully healed. So, everything depends on you. The treasures left behind by His Majesty shroud the heavens and our freedom are all in your hands, Your Majesty Gohan. What did you just call me? Mr. Gohan. Dear Mr. Gohan, everything is in your hands. Chapter 406. After communicating with Batet, Gohan roughly understood the situation of the three Egyptian gods at this time. It turned out that after the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor set up this trial array, the three Egyptian deities were placed in the trial array as the helpers of the trial array. Although it was said to be placed and assisted, it was actually similar to imprisonment. At that time, Zhetian Jiendi did not seem to have much time to leave this world. To prevent Yuan Ko's subordinates from returning to Yuan Ko's camp and wreaking havoc in this world after he left. Judging from Isis' hatred for humans, this was very likely. Once these three Yuan Kos were set free, there was a 90% chance that these three Yuan Kos would go back to being the Yuan Kos that harmed humans. However, these three Yuan Kos had done a lot for Zhetian Jiendi and made a lot of contributions. If Zhetian Jiendi killed these three Yuan Kos, Zhetian Jiendi could not bring herself to do it. She was not an ungrateful person, so Zhetian Jiendi trapped these three Yuan Kos in the trial formation to prevent them from going out to harm humans, and at the same time, to help her do something in the future. After all, no matter how powerful a sword-bearer was, they would not be able to live for 700 years. Only Yuan Kos, who had no concept of life and death, could last until Gohan appeared. In order to truly trap these three, Zhetian Jiendi also set up a seal on them, so that they could not go too far away from the trial formation. Even their strength was limited to the level of Dragon Yuan Kos, which was about the same level as a famed sword-bearer. At this level, Gohan could still put up a fight if he used all his trump cards. But something unexpected happened. For some reason, Isis suddenly broke free from the seal set by Zhetian Jiendi. However, she did not completely break free from the seal, but only partially removed it. Her strength was restored to the level of Meteor Yuan Kos, and at the same time, she could leave the trial formation for a short period of time. At first, Bast and Anubis were very happy about this, but then they found that as Isis was freed, the anger in her heart was magnified a lot. Originally, Bast and Anubis were looking forward to Gohan coming to free them, but suddenly, they magnified their resentment towards Gohan, and began to say that she would rather not have freedom than to prevent Gohan from getting those things. At this time, Bast and Anubis had already noticed that something was wrong. They began to persuade Isis to give up this unreliable idea, but Isis did not care about it at all. She completely ignored their persuasion and even started fighting with them in the end. In the end, Anubis was locked up by Isis, and Bast relied on his agility to escape from Isis. Then, he quietly waited for Gohan's arrival. After listening to Bast's explanation, Gohan thought for a long time before frowning. According to what you said, Isis is either crazy, or her mind has been contaminated by something. But no matter what the reason is, I must defeat her in order to give you freedom. But it is impossible for me to defeat her. She is too powerful, and I am no match for her. No, Mr. Gohan, you still have a chance, Bast said urgently. I remember the day we parted ways with His Majesty Jetian. I asked His Majesty what would happen if Lord Gohan did not appear at the time. His Majesty told me that Mr. Gohan would definitely appear, because it was his destiny. Then, I asked His Majesty what would happen if Mr. Gohan could not pass the previous stages and reach the final destination. His Majesty told me that Mr. Gohan would definitely pass the stages. As long as he was still called Gohan, these stages would not be a problem for him. Finally, I asked His Majesty what would happen if something happened and Mr. Gohan could not reach the final destination. At this time, His Majesty, who had always been very confident, suddenly lost her confidence. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "At that time, there might be some rats hiding in the dark who wanted to destroy her plan, but she had already left the final trump card in this trial formation. If Mr. Gohan could find the final trump card, then everything in this trial formation would disappear, and nothing would be able to stop Mr. Gohan from moving forward. So, I guess that Isis's change might be caused by those rats hiding in the dark. If Mr. Gohan could find the final trump card left by His Majesty, then he would definitely be able to defeat Isis and return us freedom." It was really hard for Bast, the cat, to say so much with her small mouth. "You mean the final trump card?" Gohan stood up from the ground. "Tell me, among the hundreds and thousands of cubicles here, where exactly is the ultimate trump card hidden, and what is this ultimate trump card? Ling, how long have we waited?" In front of the final destination, inside a pink tent, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei were lying on the same bed, covered with a quilt, watching a movie projected from the same terminal. This movie was downloaded by Song Yifei in advance. It was about an unlucky ordinary person who transmigrated into the body of a dead Yuan Ko, and then used Yuan Ko's body as a human spy, and finally helped the sword-bearers to annihilate Yuan Ko's forces in one fell swoop. The script of this movie was quite good, and there were many laughs and climaxes, especially the male lead, who was very good-looking. Both Song Yifei and Liuyan Ling enjoyed watching it. So watching movies is so interesting. Why didn't I know before? Fleeting Time Lin said after the movie was over. It seemed like the little princess of the Fleeting Time family was very satisfied with the movie. It left a lingering aftertaste. Of course the movie is interesting. Have you never watched a movie before? Song Yifei asked. She was a loyal movie lover, and was a professional movie critic with a VIP sign on many movie websites. Many people only watched the movies she recommended. But what made Song Yifei feel a little regretful was that she would not have much time to invest in movies after becoming a sword-bearer. Just like now, she had been away for almost 10 days. There must have been many interesting movies in these 10 days, but unfortunately, she could not watch any of them. I rarely watch them. Liuyan Ling shook her head. The children of the Lun Yen family have to devote all their time to training themselves. I'm afraid I won't have a chance to watch a movie with you in bed in the future. After leaving here, I have to return to the Lun Yen family. There are too many things I have to explain to my two ancestors. Sometimes I really envy commoner sword-bearers like you. You don't have to carry so many things that don't belong to you. And then you have to hand these things that you don't like to your descendants. You can't refuse these things at all. When Liuyan Ling said this, she felt very emotional. After all, she was a girl. Among the more than 20 generations of descendants of the Lun Yen family, there were very few female descendants. It was indeed a very painful and cruel thing for them to shoulder the heavy burden of such a huge family as daughters. Forget it. You don't know how lucky you are. If I could choose to reincarnate, I'd definitely be born into a family like yours in my next life. Song Yifei noticed the mysterious smile on Fleeting Ling's face, and immediately explained, "Don't get me wrong. I'm not envying the lifestyle of nobles like you. I'm not envying the lifestyle of nobles like you. To me, as long as I have a house, some money, a computer, an internet connection, and a closet of clothes, I'll be satisfied. I can live happily." The reason why I'm envious of you is that you can receive so much training from a young age. You can become so strong and help others. At this point, Song Yifei's expression became a little gloomy. For example, this time, you and Gohan fought along the way. All the skill-based missions were completed by you. I can only be a spectator and watch you complete these missions silently. I feel like I'm a dispensable spectator. Whether I'm around or not, it doesn't affect you at all. I'm only able to reach the place closest to the destination with your help. When Gohan was fighting in there yesterday, I really wanted to rush in and help him. He's always been the one helping me. Without his help, I wouldn't even have the chance to become a sword bearer. So I really want to help him. Even if it's just once, I'll be satisfied if I can really help him once. Even if I die, I'll be able to close my eyes, Song Yifei said emotionally. I'll slap your mouth. Liu Ling gave Song Yifei a light kiss on his mouth. Don't talk about dying. Don't you know that we call what you said a flag? Anyone who says something like that will probably die. To be honest, you can't say anything like that in the future. Otherwise, you'll really be in trouble. Then there's nothing I can do. Song Yifei spread his hands. I've already said it. If I'm going to die, I can only accept it. But if this flag can really come true, doesn't it mean that I can really help Gohan one day? That's good too. I have nothing to regret. You. Liu Ling was speechless. Seeing that Song Yifei had casually raised a huge flag, Liu Ling was speechless. She could only hope that Song Yifei's life would not be ruined by Gohan. Ling. Song Yifei wanted to say something to Liu Ling suddenly. Liu Ling's hand covered Song Yifei's mouth. She said quickly, let's talk about it later. Put on your clothes first. I heard footsteps. There's a second person here. Chapter 407. It's him. Song Yifei was surprised to see the second sword wielder in the final stage. Do you know him? Asked Liu Ling. Yes, he came with us. He's also a sword wielder of Yuzhong City. His name is Ku Rakin, and he's the son of Sword Immortal Baiju of Yuzhong City. Song Yifei explained in detail. The second sword wielder to reach the final stage was Ku Rakin. It seemed like Ku Rakin's arrogance was not without reason. At the very least, he was strong. Sword Immortal Baiju's son? The person in control of Yuzhong City? Liu Ling nodded. Liu Ling knew about Sword Immortal Baiju. He was a very dignified old man. Liu Ling had met Sword Immortal Baiju during her grandfather's 70th birthday. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ku Rakin. I'm Liu Ling. It's a pleasure to meet you. Liu Ling greeted Ku Rakin. She greeted Ku Rakin not because Ku Rakin was Wu Dao's son, but because everyone who entered the trial formation was here to save her, Liu Ling. Under such circumstances, it was necessary for Liu Ling to greet Ku Rakin. You're Liu Ling, the successor of the Lun family? Unexpectedly, Ku Rakin did not shake Liu Ling's hand. Instead, he looked at Liu Ling with a fastidious gaze, like a teacher who insisted on students' attire at the school gate. So you're from the Lun family. You're not worthy of inheriting Kunzu's legacy. Alright, Ku Rakin's arrogance is acting up again. Liu Ling almost choked on her breath when she saw Ku Rakin's reaction. Song Yifei pulled Liu Ling back and comforted her softly. Don't mind him, Ling. That's just how he is. He's always frivolous to everyone. In Gohan's words, he's a severe case of arrogance. Just ignore him and pretend he doesn't exist. Humph. Liu Ling snorted coldly. It's unfortunate that Sword Immortal Baiju has such a son. It seems that he's going to squander all of Sword Immortal Baiju's inheritance sooner or later. I won't take a single cent from that old man. I, Ku Rakin, will forge an era that belongs to me, Ku Rakin. I, Ku Rakin, will not take a single cent from Wu Wudao. Please don't associate me with Wu Wudao, Miss Liu Ling. I don't want to hear such words ever again. Kurakin's expression froze when he heard Liu Nianling's words. Whatever. I don't think I'll ever want to see you again. Liu Nianling turned around and ran back into her tent. She could not be bothered with the severely arrogant man anymore. Kurakin, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He walked straight to the small bar in the middle of the tent and read through the quest details. As long as I defeat Yuan Ko, will I be able to enter the finish line? Kurakin looked at Liu Nianling's tent in disdain after reading through the quest details. I thought that the descendant of the Lu Nian clan was something great. I didn't expect him to be a coward. You're clearly one step ahead of me, and the way to victory is right in front of you. Yet, you're hesitating and afraid of a mere Yuan Ko. You're simply a disgrace to Lord Kenzu. At this point, Kurakin was a little angry. He idolized Kenzu. Seeing that the descendant of Kenzu was so cowardly, he was very displeased. It was as if he had lost face. Kurakin really treated himself as the descendant of Kenzu. To think that he had so much confidence. Since the descendant of Kenzu doesn't dare to fight, then let me defeat this Yuan Ko. Doesn't this mean that I'm more suitable to be the descendant of Kenzu than the descendant of Kenzu? Thinking until here, Kurakin couldn't help but feel a little excited. Without any hesitation, he strode into the door that led to Isai's room. What an idiot! Even the descendant of the Lu Nian family doesn't dare to enter a place like this. What kind of place is this? Liu Nianling, who was observing the situation outside through the small window of the tent, smiled when she saw Kurakin enter the room. She then turned to Song Yifei with a smile. Yifei, let's make a bet. How long will it take before we hear the notification that this fellow is kicked out? Sure. Song Yifei was immediately interested. He stuck out a finger and said, I'll bet 1 minute. 1 minute. You're overestimating him. I'll bet 10 seconds. Sneered Fleeting Time, and began counting with his finger. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 10 seconds later, there was still no notification of Jules Vren's failure. Song Yifei immediately clapped and laughed out loud. Haha, it seems that I've won. Before Song Yifei could finish his sentence, he heard the male version of the heaven-covering Sword Emperor's voice. The participant has failed, and has now been sent back 200 squares. The next challenger may enter the room. 12 seconds. Liu Nianling's face was drawn. I didn't expect this fellow to be so capable. Zhu Luren, who was praised by Fleeting Time Ling as having some ability, sat on the floor of a certain room with a blank expression. He had been dealt a heavy blow. After he entered the room, the stupid bear inside launched a merciless attack on him without saying anything. If Gulvren's sword was not in his hand, and Gulvren himself was targeting the sword owner, he would have been KO'd in that surprise attack. However, Zhu Luren only managed to block one sword strike. Following that, the female bear began to attack him continuously, which was invisible to the naked eye. Zhu Luren felt that he was constantly being hit in his vital parts. In just 5 seconds, he felt pain that he had never felt in his life. I would have died if the female bear didn't want to kill me, thought Kurakin. The female bear finally stopped her attacks just as he was about to die. She opened up a portal and threw Kurakin into it. That was how Kurakin managed to survive. I've lost. Damn it. I can't even fight back. Damn it. Damn it. This was the first time Kurakin tasted such a terrible defeat. His entire outlook on life had darkened. Maybe I'm just a good-for-nothing. Maybe I don't deserve to inherit the mantle of the sword ancestor. I should always be a good-for-nothing. Well, this teenager probably couldn't bear such a heavy blow and immediately began to give up on himself. This was the disadvantage of always winning and never suffering defeat. He would instantly begin to doubt his own outlook on life. No, I'm not a trash. It's not like Kenzu hasn't failed before. I must pull myself together. I, Kurakin, will climb back up from where I fell. I want to cultivate harder. One day, I will be able to defeat that she-bear. Your Excellency Sword Master, are you telling me to persevere with the help of this she-bear? I didn't expect Ku-Rakin, this Chunibu, to be able to adjust his state of mind so well. In less than 5 seconds, he broke free from his self-abandonment and became even more determined. This was the standard of a hot-blooded main character. No, Ku-Rakin was even more hot-blooded than a hot-blooded main character. After a hot-blooded main character experienced failure, they would need a friend, a senior, or a lover to wake them up. Sometimes, a couple of people would die to wake them up. Ku-Rakin didn't need these things at all. He could climb back up on his own. What a great person he was! Unfortunately, he wasn't a main character. What a pity! Speaking of the main character, when Jules Verne looked around him, he actually found another person sitting on the other side of the room. He was holding a sword in his arms, and his eyes were closed. He didn't know what he was doing, but he seemed to be meditating. This person is the one who came with me. What's his name again? Ku-Rakin's memory wasn't bad. He actually recognized that this person was Gohan who came with him. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember this person's name. However, to have the great Ku-Rakin remember your face, what else could you ask for? Forget it. Let's not care about him. I'm going to return to the finishing point and fight with that female bear again. This time, I can definitely. Jules Verne wanted to say that he could definitely defeat that female bear this time, but when the words reached his mouth, his imposing manner inexplicably disappeared. He couldn't bring himself to say that he could defeat the female bear. The reason was simple. Ku-Rakin knew very well that he couldn't defeat the female bear. The female bear was too strong. Wait, I remember the notification mentioned that I would have to retreat 200 steps after failing, which means that all those who fail will come to this room. Thinking until here, Ku-Rakin's expression turned ugly. When he arrived at this room, Gohan was already inside. If all those who failed would come to this room, didn't that mean that Gohan was ahead of him and had reached the finishing line earlier than him? He arrived earlier than me, but he still doesn't dare to move forward. Seems like he's also a piece of trash. In the end, Ku-Rakin ignored Gohan and continued to stride towards the finishing line. He, Ku-Rakin, was a man who would never be defeated by difficulties. He would become the second man in Kanzu. This is already the 5th batch. Liu Ling looked at the room that was gradually becoming lively. As time passed, more and more teams arrived at the finishing line, but Gohan still hadn't returned. This was already the 2nd day after Gohan's failure. 2 days was more than enough for someone as strong as Gohan to walk 200 steps. Could it be that he was unlucky enough to encounter some kind of spatial teleportation, and was teleported to a place further ahead? As Liu Ling's imagination ran wild, the door of the room suddenly opened again. Another team of swordsmen entered the room. Ling. Great, I finally see you again. It's great that you're fine. The person who ran over to talk to Liu Ling was Liu Ling's childhood friend, Su Tianyuan. Behind Su Tianyuan was a timid figure. Yi Wenjun, the direct descendant of Zhetian Jiendi, and also the weakest of all the participants, had also reached the finishing line. Chapter 408. What's going on? Why is everyone gathered here? A handsome European and American fresh meat with blonde hair and blue eyes walked into the door of the final destination. He was surprised to find that there were more than 100 people gathered in this room. It seemed that most of the sword-bearers who entered the trial array had gathered here. Oh, isn't this Heinrich from the royal family of Berlin? I didn't expect you to come. A black-haired man with an oriental face came to Heinrich and greeted him. It turns out to be Mr. Wu from London. We haven't seen each other for a few years. Heinrich was the direct descendant of the Jiendi royal family of Berlin, Jiendi, while Mr. Wu was the clansman of Longsher Jiendi in London. Long Shi Jiandi was one of the two remaining Jiandi clansmen of mankind. He was also in the prime of his life and could protect mankind for at least 20 to 30 years. Therefore, the clansmen of Long Shi Jiandi were very popular in the entire human world. The aristocratic families of the major base cities were also happy to give face to the Wu family. After all human beings had to rely on Long Shi Jiandi to be safe. There was no need to offend Long Shi Jiandi. Therefore, Mr. Wu, who was only a guy from a distant branch of Long Shi Jiandi, could sit on an equal footing with the direct descendant of the Jiandi family and talk cheerfully and wittily. I don't know how long Mr. Wu has been here. What's the situation now? Can you tell me about it? This Heinrich, who was obviously of Western descent, spoke beautiful Mandarin. Even the way they addressed each other was also a Chinese style of address. This couldn't be helped. It was explained before that most of the sword maidens in this world were Chinese sword maidens. What was more amazing was that even though the sword maidens were forged in the West, they also spoke fluent Mandarin. In order to be able to communicate with their sword maidens, Mandarin was widely spread all over the world. Gradually, Mandarin was the only mainstream language left in the world. The other languages became minority languages that required the government to specially send students to learn the minority languages that were circulating. Heinrich was a standard European aristocrat, so it was not surprising that he could speak Mandarin. Not so good. Mr. Wu shook his head. Mr. Heinrich, you're late. Yuzhong City, Yanjing City, Leningrad City, Los Angeles City, London City, Buenos Aires City, and Berlin City have almost reached this last step. But we're all stuck here, unable to move forward. Some sword bearers can't hold on any longer and have chosen to leave. What's going on? Why is everyone stuck here? Heinrich was confused. What is this level testing? The situation is like this. Mr. Wu explained the general situation of the last stage. Heinrich shook his head and waved his hand. I don't believe it. Is there really no one who can defeat the last Yuan Ko and reach the final destination? Absolutely not. Mr. Wu shook his head. The first to reach here is Miss Liunian Ling from the Liunian family. According to her, she has been waiting here for almost 5 days. In these 5 days, every person who enters will hear the notification of failure and retreat 200 step. There has been no notification of success. Miss Liunian Ling. Heinrich's eyes lit up when he heard Liunian Ling's name. You mean, Miss Liunian Ling is here too? That's right. She's the first to arrive. After all, she's the descendant of the Liunian family. Mr. Wu pointed at the tent in the middle of the group of leaders in the room. That's Miss Liunian Ling's tent. Mr. Heinrich, you just arrived, so you haven't met Miss Liunian Ling yet, right? Do you want to meet her and pay her a visit? Humph, I won't go for now. When I, Heinrich, defeat that Yuan Ko in the room and obtain the treasure at the final destination, I'll give it to the beautiful and noble Miss Liunian Ling as a greeting gift. Isn't that better? Heinrich said confidently. It seemed that he was very confident in his own strength. Sigh, Gongzi Heinrich, since we're friends, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't get involved in the mess in that room. Gongzi Wu advised. Can't you see that Miss Fleeting Lin is waiting here as well? What does that mean? It means that Miss Liunian Ling is also helpless against that Yuan Ko. I also heard that in the first few days, Miss Liunian Ling advised everyone she met not to enter the room to look for that Yuan Ko. She also readily admitted that she was no match for that Yuan Ko. Could it be that you, Mr. Heinrich, are more capable than Miss Liunian Ling? Even the people from the Liunian family can't defeat that Yuan Ko? Heinrich's face finally showed some fear and hesitation. Seeing this situation, Mr. Wu struck while the iron was hot. Heinrich, you still don't know, right? Not only Miss Liunian Ling, but also the son of the Sword Fairy of Yuzhong City, the descendant of the great Confucian family, the twin stars of Buenos Aires, the madman of Leningrad, the hero king of London. Oh right, that Lydia from Berlin also failed after entering. I heard the notification of her failure with my own ears. What, Lydia also failed? Heinrich was even more shaken when he heard Lydia's name. Lydia was not an ordinary person. She was the tyrant of Berlin city. She had beaten up all her peers in Berlin and made them obedient. Some of them were famous sword-bearers. Heinrich was no exception. Because he was not a gentleman when he first met Lydia, he was beaten up by Lydia 5 times. After that, he trembled all over when he saw Lydia. In short, Lydia was recognized as the strongest sword-bearer in Berlin city. Heinrich might not have a deep understanding of the descendants of the Leonian family. After all, they were separated by 2 cities. It was impossible for them to meet unless there was a major event. However, Heinrich had a deep impression of the demon king beside him. In Heinrich's heart, Lydia was an invincible existence. He did not expect this invincible existence to fail. He, Heinrich, could not help but want to retreat. But if he retreated without even seeing the boss, then he, Heinrich, would lose too much face. How could he, a member of the royal family, admit defeat without even fighting? Just as Heinrich was struggling, suddenly, there was a commotion at the door he came in from. A group of people in white robes walked in from the door. It's them. People from Jerusalem. When Heinrich saw the group of people in white robes, he could not help but show a look of disdain in his eyes. Although the city they were in did not have absolute freedom, it was full of all kinds of inhumane restrictions and discrimination. However, the difference between these cities and Jerusalem was like heaven and earth. Therefore, every time they saw people from Jerusalem, the sword-bearers from other cities would have a natural sense of superiority and disdain. This group of people from Jerusalem was very large. There were more than 20 of them. Almost all the people from Jerusalem who entered the trial formation were in this group. The person walking at the front was none other than Ashima, the saintess of Jerusalem. Strange, why are all the people from Jerusalem gathered together? Mr. Wu asked curiously. What's so strange about that? Heinrich rolled his eyes. They stayed at the last intersection for a few days to wait for the people behind them to gather together before moving forward. Otherwise, they would have arrived here a long time ago. The future swordplay of Ashima is too terrifying. Heinrich could not help but recall the scene when he fought with the people from Jerusalem at the intersection. He also recalled the pitiful memory of being brutally beaten by the future sword. He shuddered. Perhaps with the future sword's ability, it can defeat that boss. Heinrich thought silently. The ability of the future sword changed according to the opponent's ability. The stronger the opponent, the stronger the future sword. Perhaps this saintess, Ashima, had a chance of winning. Therefore, Heinrich began to look forward to Ashima's actions. He wanted to see if she could defeat the powerful boss. In the end, Ashima did not go straight to the boss's room as Heinrich had imagined. Instead, she went to Liu Nianling's tent and spoke to Liu Nianling through the tent. Then, she left without saying a word. Heinrich expressed that it was normal. Everyone knew about the relationship between Jerusalem and the Liu Nian family. Their relationship was notoriously complicated and strange. Both sides disliked each other, but due to the kindness of Kanzu for establishing Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem had to maintain sufficient respect for the Liu Nian family. Otherwise, it would be treason and go against human justice. It would cause Jerusalem to become even more isolated from the other 7 base cities. This was something the people of Jerusalem did not wish to see. Therefore, when they went out, they had to maintain respect for the Liu Nian family regardless of whether they were willing or not. They had to greet the Liu Nian family. Fortunately, the Liu Nian family was small in numbers. Most of the people of Jerusalem would never be able to meet the Liu Nian family. Young Master Heinrich, look. Their saintess is about to enter the room. I hope they succeed. Then, we will be able to witness the sword light of the Emperor Sword's birth. Young Master Wu sincerely hoped that this saintess would succeed. The reason why they stayed here despite knowing that it was impossible for them to pass the boss test was so that they could shine the light of the legendary Emperor's sword. This would increase the chances of them successfully synchronizing with a higher-level sword lady in the future. Even if it was only a 1% chance, this was something that could change their fate in the future. This was not a joke. They would not leave this place until they had completely given up. I hope so. Heinrich did not know what he was thinking. He hoped that Ashima would succeed, but at the same time, he hoped that she would fail. If the feudal Jerusalemites were to win, the people of the other 7 cities would be disgraced. The participant has failed. She has now retreated by 200 steps. The next challenger may enter the room to continue the challenge. Without any surprises, the Saintess of Jerusalem, the wielder of the Sword of Former Determination and the Sword of Future, Ashima also announced that she had failed. Chapter 409. How can he be so strong? Does Jetian Jiendi really want to give us that treasure? Will that finish line be empty? Ashima thought angrily as she stood up from the ground. Seeing so many people stuck at the last stage, especially Liuyan Ling who couldn't move, and hearing that even Guhan had been defeated, Ashima was happy from the bottom of her heart. She was different from them. With the future swords, she was confident that she could defeat even the dragon-level Yuan Ko. This way, Ashima would be able to defeat the descendant of the Liuyan family, Liuyan Ling. With this great achievement, her position in Jerusalem would be much better than it was now. Unfortunately, her opponent wasn't the dragon-level Yuan Ko, but the Phallus-level Yuan Ko, who was 1 realm and 2 realms higher than the dragon-level Yuan Ko. This directly determined Ashima's tragic fate. The future swords could only intercept the future of opponents who were 1 realm higher than her. If the opponent was 1 realm higher, then the future swords would not be able to touch the opponent's future at all. That was why it was a tragedy for Ashima. Before she could summon the afterlife sword, she was pushed to the ground by Isis' bear-like butt. Isis opened a door and sent her back 200 steps. This happened in less than 5 seconds. It was a tragedy. Ashima slowly crawled up from the ground in a daze. She looked around and found a few other sword-bearers with gloomy expressions, as if they had suffered a heavy blow. It seemed that they had been killed by Isis in an instant. They couldn't accept the blow and lay on the ground, pretending to be corpses. What's there to be shocked about? Of course the sword-bearers would be killed by the Phallus-level Yuan Ko. Ashima was very disdainful of the people lying on the ground. She tidied up her messy veil and prepared to move forward again, returning to the finish line. But just as she was about to leave, she found something interesting. Guhan was still sitting on the ground, meditating. "Huh, why are you still here? Didn't you fail 5 days ago and come here?" Ashima squatted in front of Guhan and waved her palm in front of him, trying to attract Guhan's attention. Unfortunately, Guhan's eyes were tightly shut, turning a blind eye to everything. Ashima had established a connection with Liuyan Ling through her personal terminal the last time they met. When she visited Liuyan Ling through the tent just now, they exchanged many things. Although it seemed like Liuyan Ling was ignoring Ashima on the surface. But in fact, the two of them exchanged a lot of things through the Bluetooth device of their personal terminals. Liuyan Ling also specifically mentioned Guhan, saying that Guhan had been back for 5 days but still hadn't returned. She asked Ashima to check on Guhan when she came back later and see if he was trapped halfway. At first, Ashima was very angry when she heard Liuyan Ling's request. What does she mean? Does she think that I, Ashima, will definitely fail? Therefore, Ashima didn't take this request to heart at all. Now that she saw Guhan, she suddenly remembered this request. She didn't expect that after 5 days, Guhan still hadn't moved at all and had been staying here all this time. TSK, I thought you were very powerful, but it turns out that you're also a piece of trash who can't take the blow of failure. Ashima originally had a good impression of Guhan, but now that she saw his dejected and disheartened look, Her evaluation of him instantly dropped a lot. Forget it, I'm leaving. If I return late, I don't know what kind of bad conjectures those idiots in white robes will have about me. Ashma thought silently, then prepared to ignore Gohan and leave. However, when she took a step forward, suddenly Gohan moved. Gohan suddenly opened his eyes, and in an instant, 2 rays of light that seemed to have substance shot out from his eyes. These 2 rays of light were like super 10,000-watt light bulbs, and the instant brightness was enough to blind Ashma's eyes. These 2 rays of light appeared very suddenly, and disappeared very quickly as well. In less than 0.1 seconds they disappeared into Gohan's eyes. The others who didn't notice here didn't notice Gohan's abnormality at all, but all this was seen by Ashma. What's wrong with this guy? Did he cry his eyes blind? Ashma speculated maliciously in her heart. She didn't want to leave now. She wanted to see what Gohan was going to do next, and whether his eyes would emit that strange light again. However, after watching for a long time, Ashma didn't see any movement from Gohan. Just when Ashma thought that Gohan was dead, Gohan suddenly spoke. Your Excellency, you've been watching for so long. Can you do me a favor? Gohan's voice was very weak, like a person who was about to die. What do you want me to help you with? Ashma's voice was cold, and she still acted like a saintess. It's very simple. Help me up. Gohan smiled bitterly, and his voice became even weaker. I've been sitting on the ground for too long, and the blood in my feet have long been blocked. I've lost all feeling, and I can't rely on my own strength to get up. This is your Ling's job, not mine. All right, I still have something to do, so I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave first. Ashma snorted coldly. She still looked cold and noble, but there was a hint of cheerfulness in her words. Seeing Gohan, the person who defeated her, being humiliated, Ashma was very happy. If you don't help me up, I'll die here. Gohan begged bitterly. Ashma imagined it. I haven't eaten for 5 days, and now I can't move my arms and legs. If you don't help me circulate my blood, I'll really die here. What will you do if Ling finds out that you didn't help me when I was dying? Are you threatening me? Ashma turned her head abruptly, and the mouth under the veil spat out a cold breath. No, I'm begging you. A wise man submits to circumstances. Although Gohan was a cold and aloof person, it didn't mean that he was stupid. Although it didn't mean that he would really die if Ashma didn't help him, it would still cause him a lot of trouble. Right now, every cell in his body was craving for energy. He had to eat immediately, or his body would suffer irreversible damage. Humph, grab this. Ashma didn't reach out her hand directly. Instead, she pushed a strand of her white veil in front of Gohan, indicating for Gohan to grab her white veil and pull him up through it. It seemed that Ashma hated Gohan very much. Otherwise, she wouldn't even want to let Gohan touch her. Thank you. Gohan made a very ugly smile, and then his fingers grabbed the white veil in front of him with great difficulty. Seeing that the other party had a firm grip, Ashma snorted unhappily without a second thought. She pulled forcefully and pulled Gohan, who was still in a meditative posture, up from the ground. Ah! Ashma originally only wanted to pull Gohan up, but she didn't expect that Gohan's legs had completely lost the ability to stand. Before he could stand up straight, his body went limp again. Of course, when she pulled him, she would naturally pull him towards her. Since Gohan couldn't stand properly, he would naturally fall forward and fall onto Ashma's body. Therefore, we saw Gohan fall in front of Ashma, and his head was placed between Ashma's breasts. Not to mention, Ashma, who didn't stand out under the white veil, was actually a very voluptuous woman. Her breasts were much bigger than Liuyan Ling's and Song Yifei's. Her breasts were at least a D-cup. There was also a delicate fragrance surrounding her breasts, soaking through her robe and constantly entering Gohan's nose. Seeing that her breasts were being attacked, Ashma instinctively wanted to release her breasts, but she heard Gohan say in a low voice, "Don't make any big movements or else you'll alarm those people lying on the ground." If they see us like this, your reputation will be completely ruined. Are you sure you want to move? Hearing Gohan's words, although Ashma gritted her teeth, she forcefully suppressed her anger. With one hand, she pushed Gohan away from her chest, and then held onto Gohan's shoulder. Supporting him, she walked step by step with Gohan into the next room. This room was empty, not a single person was in it. Ashma pushed Gohan to the ground, then pulled out her sword and pointed it at Gohan's chest. She said fiercely, "If you dare to say a word about what happened today, even if I have to disregard my morals as a sword-bearer, I will kill you. Don't worry, I don't want to offend those religious lunatics in Jerusalem." Gohan nodded. Although he had only walked a few steps with Ashma's support, Gohan's chi and blood had already begun to circulate. Gohan immediately began to control his sword essence, then drove the chi and blood in his body to quickly flow through his meridians and blood vessels, moving all the blood that had been deposited in his blood vessels for a long time back to his heart. In less than 10 minutes, all of Gohan's chi and blood had been unobstructed, and his hands and feet could move again. Bite! The first thing Gohan did after regaining the ability to move his hands was to open his dimensional pocket and toss out all the food he had prepared inside. Then, without any care for his image, he directly grabbed the rice bucket with his hands and stuffed it into his mouth. He did the same with the braised pork and vegetables. There was no need for chopsticks. He just used his hands and stuffed mouthfuls of rice and braised pork into Gohan's bottomless stomach. Ashma looked at Gohan as if she was looking at a ghost. She watched as the bucket of rice and the basin of braised pork slowly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, it was as if Gohan did not need to chew at all as he stuffed them into his mouth and swallowed them. Meanwhile, his stomach seemed to be filled with supergastric acid that had a strong digestive effect. Quickly broke down all the food Gohan ate and transported the energy inside to all the cells in Gohan's body. There's actually such a glutton in the world. Ashima was completely stunned. She didn't know how many days Gohan had been starved for him to become like a reincarnated hungry ghost. Oh, I almost forgot. Chinpin and Etienne have been starving for 5 days as well. Gohan immediately tossed out his tent, then used his sword essence to control his food into the tent. "Miss Saintis, please leave first. My sword lady is shy and doesn't like to be seen by others when she's eating. I will repay your kindness in the future." "What is this? I'll throw it away after using it?" Hearing Gohan's words, Ashma was so angry that her lips trembled. She immediately turned around and left, not wanting to see this damned man ever again. Chapter 410. It had been 12 days since Liuyan Ling arrived, and it had been 7 or 8 days since most of the sword-bearers arrived at the final destination. At this time, after countless failures, no one was willing to go to the boss room and ask for trouble. According to the statistics of the sword-bearers, everyone roughly knew that the Yuan Ko guarding the room was not the Yuan Ko that was transformed from the memory fragments of Jiendi, but a real Yuan Ko, a real meteor-level Yuan Ko. At this time, most of the sword-bearers belonged to 7 groups according to their cities. Among them, the group from Jerusalem had the largest number of people. It was especially eye-catching when they gathered together in a vast expanse of white. The second group was the group from Buenos Aires. Like Jerusalem, they also had more than 20 people. Then came the group from Yenjing, which had about 17 or 18 people. Then came London, Berlin, Los Angeles, and Yuzhong, which had the least number of people. The sword-bearers of these cities did not gather together freely. Instead, they stood in a more orderly manner. In front of each group, there was a sword-bearer with an extraordinary temperament standing in front of them. They looked like the class monitor of a class, the leader of the city. The leader of Yenjing City was, of course, Fleeting Time Rin. The leader of London City was a 2-meter-tall man with the demeanor of a king. On the other hand, the leader of Berlin City was a girl with long hair that was even more golden than gold. Her blue eyes were filled with pride, and she was trying her best to act like a mature adult. However, it was not enough to hide her perfect Lolita face and body. However, she stood in front of a group of Germanic women who were about 1.8 meters tall. It was a very incongruous scene, but the aura of all the Germanic women was completely suppressed by the blonde girl. Instead, it became unusually harmonious. The leaders of Buenos Aires were a pair of twin siblings. The elder brother and sister stood together, arm in arm. They did not seem to care about the finish line. They just looked at each other with burning eyes. A sweet smell filled the air. Los Angeles was relatively scattered, each doing their own thing, and did not seem to have their own leader. In Lungching, their leader, the Saintess Ashima, had not returned after the failure. Yuzhong City was very lonely. Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun stood together, while Ku Rock-in stood alone on the other side, deliberately distancing himself from Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yuzhong City was not united. However, the others didn't care about Yuzhong City's opinion at all. There were only a few kittens and puppies. It seemed that Yuzhong City had really declined. Lydia, it's time for us to make a decision. The 2-meter-tall man from London kept pointing at the ground in front of him with his giant sword. We have wasted a whole 7 days here. We must make a decision immediately. Do we continue or leave? Reinhardt, why are you asking me? Didn't you already make your own decision? The blonde lowly Lydia was small, but her aura was not small. Her voice was as loud as a large bell, causing the others' eardrums to hurt. Well, I've said it. I suggest we leave immediately. Don't waste any more time here. I can increase my sword essence by 500 quarks in the 7 days we've wasted here. Reinhardt said heavily. It seemed that the 7 days of wasted time had made him very unhappy. Okay, I have no objection. You can leave with your people. I promise I won't stop you. Lydia said with a look of, please do as you please. Lydia, everyone must leave together. Reinhardt said. All the cities came in together, so naturally we should leave together. We humans are a whole and can't be separated. Don't you think so? Who's a whole with you? I, Lydia, am Lydia, and my underlings are my underlings. Who wants to be a whole with a muscular man like you? What I mean is very clear. If you, Reinhardt, want to leave, we won't stop you. However, don't think about making decisions for me, Lydia. What a joke. The man in this world who can make decisions for me, Lydia, hasn't been born yet. Hearing this, they roughly understood the situation. The sword-bearers gathered here were divided into 2 factions. One faction felt that Ice Eyes could not be defeated at all and wanted to leave. The leader was Hero King Reinhardt, who was the leader of London. The other faction wanted to stay here, and the leader was Lydia. Originally, these 2 factions had nothing to do with each other. Those who wanted to stay could stay, and those who wanted to leave could leave. It would be great if they did not interfere with each other. However, Reinhardt was a little petty and did not want to be at a disadvantage. He was worried that if he left, someone would really find a way to defeat the boss and then bathe in the sword ray of the king's sword. If that was really the case, then he, Reinhardt, would probably have to suffer for a few years. Therefore, Reinhardt wanted everyone to leave with him. That way, everyone would not be able to bathe in the sword ray of the king's sword, and there would be no problem of being at a disadvantage. Naturally, others would not agree with Reinhardt's behavior. You might not be patient, but I am. Therefore, the 2 sides were in a stalemate, and no one could convince the other. Messi, tell me, should you people from Buenos Aires leave or stay here and waste time? Reinhardt realized that he couldn't convince Lydia, so he tried to get help from other cities. His first target was the sword-bearer in Buenos Aires. He had a friendship with the siblings, Christina Messi, and thought that she would be on his side. You guys fight it out. If you manage to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then Buenos Aires will follow you. Isn't that right, my dear sister Melanie? Messi did not look at Reinhardt at all as he spoke. All his attention was on his sister. Miss Liunyinling, what do you think we should do? Buenos Aires seemed to be going with the flow, so Reinhardt could not say anything more. Therefore, he began to ask Liunyinling for her opinion. What I mean is very simple. If you want to stay, then stay. If you want to leave, then leave. I will not force you. Liunyinling's words were powerful, and Reinhardt's face turned green and purple. Liunyinling had completely rejected Reinhardt's opinion. Reinhardt had no choice but to ask Los Angeles and Jerusalem for their opinions. In the end, because Los Angeles did not have a leader, everyone had their own plans. There was no unified opinion at all. On the other hand, Jerusalem insisted that everything would be decided by their saintess. If the saintess wasn't around, they wouldn't express any opinions. As for Yuzhong City, Lionheart couldn't even be bothered to ask. There were only 3 people in Yuzhong City, so their opinions weren't important at all. The scene seemed to have fallen into a stalemate. No one could come up with a unified opinion. Just then, Song Yifei whispered to Iwenjun. Iwenjun took a few deep breaths, then plucked up her courage and took a step forward. In order to take this step, Iwenjun spent 9 days. You brat! What are you doing? Why are you moving? Can't you see that we are in a meeting? Go back and stand properly. Hearing such a sudden explosion, Iwenjun's hair stood on end in fright. He stood in place, trembling with fear, not knowing whether to advance or retreat. I just want to go in. I want to go in and challenge. Iwenjun said 3 sentences in one sentence, almost making Iwenjun cry. You want to go in? Just because you are a piece of trash? Ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. Reinhardt laughed loudly. His eyes were very sharp. He could tell that Iwenjun's ability was actually very bad. She was not even at the average level, let alone in this place where the elites of the sword rank gathered. Iwenjun was completely a piece of trash here. Pfft, who do you think you are? What right do you have to control the people of Yuzhong City? Wenjun, ignore him. Go over yourself, he won't dare to do anything to you. Song Yifei rushed in front of Iwenjun like an old mother hen, protecting Iwenjun behind her. She spoke to Reinhardt without showing any signs of weakness. This chick actually dares to talk back to me. So cute. Seeing Song Yifei, Reinhardt's face inexplicably blushed. Then, he had a very strange feeling. We are in a meeting. As the saying goes, the minority obeys the majority. When we have a result in the meeting, you can just follow it. Now, go back and don't move without my orders. Reinhardt's brain was somewhat different from ordinary people's. He seemed to think that showing his domineering side in front of a woman would make that woman like him. Enough, Reinhardt, you have no right to interfere with the sword-bearers of Yuzhong City. Moreover, this trial formation was created by Yuzhong City's heaven-shrouding Jiandi. No one has more right to decide this matter than Yuzhong City. Liunyinling berated Reinhardt. Did you know that Iwenjun is a descendant of shrouding the heavens? He's a direct descendant of Sword Emperor shrouding the heavens. What? He is from the heaven-shrouding family? The descendant of heaven-shrouding Jiandi? Heaven-shrouding family? Someone who hasn't seen their family for hundreds of years has come out. TSK, such a weak sword-bearer, is he really from the heaven-shrouding family? Could he be a liar? Everyone's discussion made Iwenjun want to dig a hole in the ground so that he could crawl in. The descendant of the heaven-shrouding family? The master here? Reinhardt revealed a happy smile. That's great. Kid from the heaven-shrouding family, if you are the master here, then you must know a way to defeat that Yuan Ko. Hurry up and tell us, so that we can all have a chance to bathe in that sword aura. It'll be a great deed for us humans. Hurry up and tell us the secret of this trial formation, hurry up! By the end, Reinhardt was no longer talking. Instead, he was shouting like a cannonball, scaring Iwenjun so much that her legs were trembling. She didn't even know how to walk. Ha ha ha, so it's just a coward. How can someone like him be the descendant of heaven's shrouding family? What a joke. Reinhardt laughed crazily as he approached Yi Wenjun and Song Yifei step by step. Kid, come, let Reinhardt help you recall the secret of this trial array. Shut your mouth. He is the descendant of heaven's shrouding Jiandi. Yuzhang City will not allow a pig like you to insult him. Ku Rokin suddenly stood in front of Reinhardt and said word by word. Who would have thought that Ku Rokin would actually help Yi Wenjun at this time? Get out of my way. Reinhardt grabbed Ku Rokin's neck, trying to shake him off. He didn't expect that Ku Rokin would move sideways and dodge Reinhardt's attack. Instead, he appeared behind Reinhardt and aimed at his butt, ready to kick it. You two, are you going to fight? Liu Nianling's face was frosty. If that's the case, then I'll have to send both of you to the medical bay, and then come with me to the sword committee to explain. For a moment, the scene became extremely quiet. Because of Liu Nianling's words, Ku Rokin and Reinhardt didn't dare to fight anymore, but they both held their breaths. No one could be the first to step back. Interesting. Interesting. I didn't expect to see such an interesting scene as soon as I came back. Everyone turned their heads at the same time and looked in the direction of the voice. There, Ashima walked in, glowing. Behind Ashima, the figure of Gohan was particularly inconspicuous. Chapter 411. Saintess. Seeing Ashima, all the sword-bearers from Jerusalem immediately surrounded her, while Gohan quietly went to Yuzhang City's team. Gohan, you're finally back. Song Yifei saw Gohan and immediately surrounded him with joy. At the same time, Yi Wenjun also came up to greet him. Liu Nianling was naturally happy to see Gohan back. However, due to the presence of so many people in Yanjing, she could not run to Gohan's side like Song Yifei. There was an accident. What happened here? Why do I feel like there's a fight going on? Gohan noticed that the sword-bearers had gathered together and sensed that something was wrong with the situation, so he immediately asked. Gohan, you have no idea. That Reinhardt is too overbearing. Song Yifei immediately told Gohan everything that had happened. Gohan nodded slightly. This Reinhardt is also an interesting person. Interesting? He doesn't even look at us from Yuzhang City. Isn't it because we have fewer people? Song Yifei said indignantly. Saintess, right? You came at the right time. Let me ask you, do you want to leave with us? Don't waste any more time. Reinhardt ignored Ku Rokin behind him and directly asked Ashima, who had just arrived. Saintess, it's like this. One of Ashima's subordinates whispered in her ear. Ashima's eyes lit up as she listened, and a hint of excitement flashed across her face. You're asking for our opinion? That's interesting. Reinhardt, have you asked for the opinion of the owner here? Owner? Where is the owner here? Reinhardt said loudly. Isn't the person next to you the owner of this place? Ashima chuckled coldly. His Majesty Shroud Heaven built this trial by fire formation, which means this is where his descendants reside. I heard this little brother is the successor of the Shrouding Heavens clan. If he's not the owner of this place, then who is? Since we've received the blessing of the Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor and are fortunate enough to enter this trial array, shouldn't we respect the owner of this place? Even I, a Jerusalemite who is despised by you so-called free people, know this principle. Don't tell me that you, a dignified hero king, don't know the most basic respect for your master? How dare you shout at the owner of this place and force him to reveal his family secrets? Reinhardt, you're really giving face to your London mayor. Alright. Well said, Saintess. The Saintess is right. This is the truth. This Reinhardt is too shameless. He actually bullied the owner of this place. Ashma's subordinates immediately began to clamor and applaud their Saintess. Even the people from the other cities nodded subconsciously, tacitly agreeing with Ashma's statement. This completely embarrassed Reinhardt. I just don't want everyone to waste time here. If everyone could leave this place together or find a way to enter the final point together, would I still be in such a hurry? I'm doing this for everyone's sake. Lionheart tried very hard to justify himself. As for whether or not he believed what he said, that was another matter. Young Master E, I heard that you wanted to enter Yuan Ko's room just now, right? Ashma had just said that Yi Wenjun was the owner of this place, and everyone should respect him. These words struck a chord in Yi Wenjun's heart. This immediately made Yi Wenjun have a good impression of Ashma. He felt that this Jerusalemite's words were really nice. She must be a kind-hearted woman. Yes, I want to go in. I'm a descendant of the Yi family after all. There's no reason for me to not enter my ancestors' relic. Even if I'm destined to fail, I still want to go in and see what's going on, Yi Wenjun said firmly. However, Yi Wenjun had been very hesitant before this. He was not afraid of failure, but he was afraid that if others knew that he, as a descendant of the Yi family, failed in his ancestors' relic, it would tarnish the Yi family's reputation. That was why he did not dare to take action. However, he also felt that since he was a descendant of heaven-shrouding Jiendi, perhaps the ancestor would leave him a backdoor or something. That way, even if he was the weakest among them, he would still have the highest chance of success. If he succeeded in front of the younger generation of the 8 base cities, wouldn't the heaven-shrouding family gain a lot of face? Therefore, Yi Wenjun had been in a dilemma until Reinhardt encouraged everyone to leave together. Yi Wenjun was afraid that he wouldn't be able to go in and give it a try. That was why he was eager to enter the final boss room. Very well, young Master E, you should go in. Ashma walked in front of Reinhardt. Reinhardt, the owner of this room wants to go in. Are you going to stop him? Reinhardt did not say anything, but it was obvious that he agreed with Ashma's words. Under Ashma's protection, Yi Wenjun finally entered the boss room. This brat looks so skinny. He'll probably be chased out by that female bear in less than 2 seconds. Reinhardt predicted in disdain when he saw Yi Wenjun enter. Then, something embarrassing happened. Yi Wenjun entered for a whole minute, but he did not hear the system notification that he had failed. This brat didn't really succeed, right? Reinhardt caressed his sword. None of the people present, including Reinhardt, could last more than 30 seconds in the boss room. Yi Wenjun had been in there for a whole minute. He's the descendant of Zhetian Jiendi. Zhetian Jiendi would naturally leave a backup plan for his descendant. What's so strange about that? Let's just quietly wait for him to come out. It's best if he can bring out that Empress sword. Let us small sword wielders admire the Empress sword lady's sword light. Ashma strolled back to the middle of her people. Then, she discreetly glanced at Gohan through the veil. However, she found that he had his head lowered and seemed to be thinking about something. It was as if he had not noticed her at all. Immediately, 2 waves of anger rose in her. After waiting for about 10 minutes, when everyone thought that Yi Wenjun might have succeeded, a door opened in the space in the room and Yi Wenjun fell out. How was it? Did you obtain the Empress sword, Empress? Reinhardt was the first to rush up and grab Yi Wenjun's shoulder to interrogate him. Yi Wenjun was so frightened that he kept retreating. He looked like a little chick that was caught by an eagle. If it wasn't for someone supporting his tottering body, he would probably have fallen to the ground by himself. People of London, behave yourselves. This isn't a place where you can act presumptuously. The person who spoke was Gohan. He had unknowingly appeared behind Yi Wenjun and saved him from Reinhardt's clutches. Who are you? Are you also from the Zhetian family? Reinhardt stared into Gohan's eyes as he asked in a low voice. Although Reinhardt's actions were very arrogant, that didn't mean he was an idiot. He could feel a powerful force from Gohan's body. It was a force that even Reinhardt didn't know about. I'm Yi Wenjun's friend. The Yi family head instructed me to protect Yi Wenjun and not let anyone with ulterior motives hurt him. Gohan made up a story. He had never seen Yi Wenjun's parents before, let alone been instructed by them. I don't care so much. Everyone has worked so hard to come here just to see the Emperor's sword and to look up to the Emperor's sword. Now that the Emperor's sword is in this kid's hands, he must take it out. Otherwise, no one will be able to leave. Just now, Reinhardt was still forcing everyone to leave this place. In the end, it became that no one could leave at this moment. Reinhardt's heart was completely focused on the Empress sword. There weren't many Empress swords in London. There was only one. Therefore, everyone in London dreamed of having an Empress sword in their city, even if their city's sword-bearer couldn't synchronize their city's Empress sword. However, if other cities' sword-bearers synchronized their city's Empress sword, then according to the rules between sword-bearers, no matter which city the sword-bearer originally belonged to, after synchronizing the Empress sword, the sword-bearer must belong to the city where the Empress sword was located. Therefore, every additional Empress sword in their base city would increase the possibility of having an Empress sword-bearer. How was it that Yanjing City could continuously have Emperor sword-level sword-wielders? Wasn't it because there were 5 Empress swords hidden in Yanjing City's sword tower? This time, Reinhardt had received a death order from London City's sword committee. If there was an Empress sword in the trial ground, then he must bring the Empress sword back to London City. Reinhardt had the confidence to do so because he had Long Shi Jiandi, who was born and raised in London City, behind him. I didn't succeed. I didn't get the Empress sword either. Yi Wenjun immediately waved his hand when he heard Reinhardt's words. Then, he took out a secret manual and an aquamarine knife from his dimensional pocket. I didn't beat that Yuan Kogard, but she recognized me as a descendant of our ancestor, so she let me enter a small room. That's the reward that our ancestor left for our Yi family descendant. It's all here. I really didn't get any Empress sword, Yi Wenjun said in an aggrieved manner. Green silk cutter. Seeing the thing in Yi Wenjun's hand, Lionheart's entire body emitted a greedy light. This was because the dark green knife in Yi Wenjun's hand was the most precious legendary green hair cutter. Yi Wenjun's family had been in decline for too long, and she had never even seen a picture of the green hair cutter. She thought that this dark green knife was just some useless decoration, so she took it out to display. If Yi Wenjun knew it was green silk cutter, he would never have taken it out. Idiot, put it back in my dimensional pocket. Guhan patted Yi Wenjun's hand. Yi Wenjun shuddered and immediately put green silk cutter back, which made Reinhardt, who had a ferocious and greedy gaze, extremely envious. If there weren't so many people gathered here and so many pairs of eyes staring at him, Reinhardt might have tried to snatch it. I don't believe it. He must have hidden the Empress sword. Reinhardt shouted. Tell me honestly, where did you hide the Empress sword? Reinhardt, have you had enough? You're a disgrace to the people of London. Liuyan Ling walked over coldly. It's easy to find out if the Yi family descendant entered the final room. Let your men see if the female bear is still there. If she's not there, it means that the Yi family descendant succeeded. It won't be too late for you to make a fuss then. Reinhardt didn't say anything because Liuyan Ling's words made sense and he couldn't refute her. Reinhardt waved his hand at one of his sword-bearers. You go in and take a look. The sword-bearer had no choice but to listen to Reinhardt and enter the boss room. Soon, there was a failure notification. The unlucky kid failed as expected. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.